Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. In his dreams, Jon traveled to many places. He heard the giant roar of the Titan of Braavos at sunrise, a great gust of air squeezed through pipes running from the massive bronze breastplate to the mouth of the giant stone head, 400 feet above sea level and crowned by a wig of green-dyed hempen hair. He walked the ruined Great Pyramid of Gas, built as a mausoleum for Grasdan the Great, King of Kings, the emperor who declared he was greater than the gods. The monument was haunted by bats and spiders, and the outlying city turned to ash and cinder by dragon flame, the fields sown with salt, sulfur, and the skulls of the masters. He sailed through the Jade Gates, in defiance of the perfumed lords of court. Pale men with blue lips gibbered in some unknown tongue and hopped from foot to foot in a pitiful pantomime. Warlocks had no true power. If they did, they would not serve greedy merchant princes or hide like rats in the house of the undying. The island was damp and dreary, but warmed by sulfur. The rocks were dark gray and black, with streaks of red and purple. Obsidian, Jon thought, forged in the fires of a volcano. Hard and brittle but amorphous as glass, fracturing with sharp edges. The children of the forest had no metal and hunted with blades of obsidian. He smelled the stink of brimstone and saw the outline of the volcano through the gray mist, steam rising from vents. The Dragonmont. He was on the island of Dragonstone. The castle stood below the Dragonmont, grim and forbidding, built of dark stone at the entrance of Blackwater Bay. Hundreds of gargoyles leered from the walls, carved in the shape of basilisks, cockatrices, hellhounds, minotaurs, and wyverns. But they were nothing compared to the dragons. The Sea Dragon Tower was shaped like a dragon, gazing serenely across the sea. The Windworm was a tower where the dragons screamed defiance. Even the Great Hall of the Stone Drum was carved as a dragon. Doors set so those entering passed through its mouth. The Targaryens knew well the grief and glory of their house. But stone dragons were nothing compared to a living beast, and here on the Dragonstone, so many eggs had hatched. Vhagar, Meraxes, Vermithor, and Silverwing. Even wild dragons clustered in the Dragonmont. Jon saw her rushing to the Windworm. She was a skinny little thing, wrapped up in gray and black, darting and dodging in the shadows of the dragons. Her hair was tied up under a gray shawl, and she carried a brown leather pouch strapped over her gray tunic. From a distance, she looked like Arya, wild and quick. Jon chased after her as she climbed the stairs of the tower. He sensed the magic even before he heard the roar, an immense power, unable to be contained or truly tamed. The roof of the tower was covered in shadow by vast black wings. The dragon's shadow was so great that it covered much of the castle in darkness. The scales were black, the teeth longer than a two-handed sword, and the large black eyes gazed down at the girl like a god overseeing a sacrifice. The girl had unwrapped her shawl, and Jon could see the silver-gold hair and purple eyes. Her face was young but troubled. She might have been older than Arya, but not by many name days. "Please, take me home," she said to the dragon, and Jon knew then who she was. The girl was Arya Targaryen, first and only one who ever bore that name. The Archmaesters called her willful and defiant, but she had suffered, as an orphan and as a pawn of her mother and supposed friends. Her father, Aegon the Uncrowned, died at the age of 17, killed by his uncle Maegor Cruel near the God's Eye. Her mother had forsaken her for 8 years, and then taken her from King's Landing as a spiteful gesture to King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne. Arya hated Dragonstone, and wanted to do nothing more than mount a dragon and fly away. She wanted to sail the seas and have great adventures. Arya chose the wrong dragon. Balerion flew home to Old Valyria. The dragon and its rider could not be found for a year despite the best efforts of the king and the small council. When she returned, she was dying, rail-thin with a burning fever and flesh sticking to her bones. Her clothes were tattered, her hair matted and tangled, and her eyes bloody and raw. Strange swellings moved under her skin, trying to escape and burning her flesh and skin, cooking and eating her alive. Really just wanted to be free. The gods were cruel. Why did they sentence a young girl to such monstrous horror? "Help me, please. Save me," she cried. But no one saved Arya, Targaryen. The dragon would only deliver her to doom. The history of House Targaryen was rife with tragedy and bloodshed. Jaqen I was celebrated as a conqueror, but his son Maegor was brutal, craving power, violence, and total dominion over his family. The Targaryens were full of kinslayers and miscreants, and madness and cruelty lurked under the Valyrian beauty. Some victims were preserved in song, knights and kings who died on the battlefield, male heirs who were betrayed, but no one sang about the women. They may not have sat on the Iron Throne, but they still bled. Jon thought of Lyanna, who saw her 6-year-old son butchered as retribution for another kinslaying. That killing, a 14-year-old boy, was Lucerys Valyrian, and his mother Rhaenyra saw 3 of her boys killed in the dance. Even Queen Alicent had 10 children die before her death, and the last, a simple-minded girl, killed herself after being seduced and giving birth to a stillborn, but no death was as horrible or unnecessary as Princess Arya. She was a wild dragon who just wanted to be free, like Arya, his brave little sister. I wish I could save you, Jon thought, that I could fly to Valyria and rescue you from the doom. He would build Arya a sturdy carrack with 4 masts, square sails, and a lady mizzen, suitable for deep waters with a hull and beam better than the Sun Chaser. He would rub an iron needle with a lodestone to point north, so the ship could sail west of Westeros across the uncharted waters of the Sunset Sea. How can you save her? A mocking voice hissed. Jon Snow cannot fly to Valyria. He ignored Bloodraven. He would save them, all of them, so that one day, young girls did not die for their family's sins. What was honor if it could not protect the innocent? And then he woke. Jon stood up in the darkness, the only light a nearly full moon. He reached for Ghost, and could feel the white wolf a dozen miles away, howling with his brother Grey Wind. They feasted on the flesh of a small stag, happy not to eat any more trout. Jon opened the cage and concentrated. The raven squawked a bit, but then flew out the window. The bird was far less welcoming than Ghost, but Jon could slide his mind into the raven's eyes for a few minutes at a time. The grounds below hosted thousands of tents, and the army of the north and the Riverlands camped on all sides of the castle. Near the castle, past the spinning water wheel on the west gate, waist-high wooden barriers had been set up for the joust. Carpenters had built 3 tiers of benches, a viewing stand with a red and blue canopy in the middle to protect lords and ladies from the rain. A few pavilions had been erected, but Jon was more interested in the dozens of cruder tents clustered near the tumblestone. These were for the wine sellers, armorers, and well-off merchants attracted by prospects for commerce. Poorer tradesmen would set up shop soon to hawk fried sausages, fresh bread, and boiled eggs. The game started in 2 days, but already, knights, squires, and lordlings had started to arrive. Even ladies were able to travel, accompanied by only a small number of guards, due to the relative calm that had fallen over the Riverlands. Rumors flew of the thousands of captives held in oubliettes to be sacrificed on weirwood altars, although the bards sang of Jaime Lannister's mighty feats in battle, slaying dozens of knights. The singers claimed that the Lion of Lannister had been defeated by trickery, not by honest battle. There were even wilder stories of a giant tower that spat out steel straight from the fires of hell, and that Lord Tully had been poisoned, although no one could agree whether it was the Riverlords, the lions, or the wolves behind the heinous act. It was undeniable that monstrous dire wolves fought for the North, a sign that House Stark was either blessed by the bloody gods of the North or full of foul shapeshifters. The raven returned to the castle, ready for sleep. Before the bird flew into the window, Jon saw candlelight through the stone balcony of the solar. He knew that it could not be Hoster Tully, and he doubted that Edmure would be awake. He walked out to seek his brother. Jon found Robb poring over a map of the Riverlands, paying special attention to where the 3 forks of the Trident met with the river road. Jon refilled his brother's cup with water and waited until his brother was finished, marking the parchment. I couldn't sleep. I expected the Lannisters today. They are certainly taking their sweet time, Robb said. It had been a week since Lord Master had been dispatched east. They may already be here. There are new pavilions and tents, and it would not surprise me if Lannister guards arrived early, Jon replied. Robb ran a hand through his red hair. Roose Bolton claims the tourney will be dangerous. The grounds will be full of informants reporting to King's Landing and other lords. Jon had no doubt that the Leech Lord had his own spies, prowling on the tourney grounds. He is right. Spies can be hidden among the knights and small folk attending the games. But we have 20,000 men and the castle will be sealed tight. And the crowds work in our favor as well. We can release prisoners from the dungeons to head south or west, Jon said. We have gotten ravens from as far as Old Town, expressing interest in the tourney, but nothing from the Vale. My aunt is silent, Robb said. It could be Petyr Balish's influence. If he took her maidenhead, he may be swaying her to the Lannister side, Jon said. My lady mother does not believe the Kingslayer's words. She thinks of Petyr still as her childhood friend. She asked Baelish to help father in King's Landing. She says that Aunt Lysa sent a raven to Winterfell about her hatred of the Lannisters, Robb said. Actions matter, not words. Father was helped by someone, perhaps Baelish, into the Black Cells. And if Lady Arryn truly hated the Lannisters, she would send the Knights of the Vale to fight, not write a letter, Jon said. I agree. Lady Stark is angry with you, Robb said. Catelyn Stark was unhappy often, but she had been particularly annoyed this week over the blast furnace. Lady Stark argued that he should gift a suit of plate to each of the great houses of the North, especially Lord Bolton and Lord Karstark. Jon chose instead to honor the Mormonts, replacing patched ringmail and chain with steel. The she-bear received the first true set of armor, breastplate, pauldrons, thicker on the right side, gauntlets, tassets, greaves, and a visorless helmet with a Y-shaped opening for the eyes and mouth. Maegid Mormont looked like an armored bear, and was just as dangerous. I stand by my decision. The Mormonts have been the most loyal allies of House Stark for 1,000 years, Jon said. And now they are House Stark's best armored fighters. Robb jested. I forged armor and weapons for your guard as well. Loyalty is forged in battle. Those who fought bravely deserve to be rewarded, Jon said. Unspoken was the fact that Rickard Karstark and Rose Bolton had seen no battle yet. My lady mother thinks you favor the she-bears for other reasons. Are you not sparring with Daisy, Lyra, and Jari in secret? Robb, you wanted me to train with weapons. Daisy is an excellent fighter, and she and her sisters are happy to spar late in the day. Unlike some, I cannot spend all my time preening before the men in the yard, Jon said. Late in the day, is there a betrothal I should be aware of? A baby she-bear to be named the heir of Bear Island? Robb J. Daisy beats the hell out of me daily, and her sisters are skilled as well with the mace. I have many bruises to prove that, unless the Mormont courting ritual is a melee, I do not think I will not be married anytime soon. Jon said grumpily. Robb laughed and decided not to tease any further. The Mormonts are loyal bannermen, and I am glad you armored them. Your judgment is good. Jon, I need your counsel more than ever. I worry about this meeting. The Lannisters are clever and tricky. I do not fear facing Tywin Lannister over the battlefield. The negotiation table is a different matter. You have my support, but Tywin Lannister will not come to River Run. We will negotiate with his messenger before the old lion gives his final say. Jon said, and if he does not give an acceptable offer, Robb said, arching his eyebrows. Then we fight, as you said. House Stark is good at battle. Our ancestors only bowed to the dragons, and a lion is no dragon. Jon finished the morning with a thick, creamy seafood stew. It was not quite the famous dish of the Three Sisters, the island south of White Harbor and north of the Mountains of the Moon, but it warmed him to the bones. River crabs had been substituted for spider and red crabs, but the stew had cod, crab, and clams in a stock of heavy cream and butter with leeks, carrots, and turnips. Jon enjoyed the simple but hearty food. He was sure the feasts that the stewards were preparing for the tournament would not be any more satisfying. For the past week, Jon settled into a busy and productive routine. He woke up at dawn and after washing his face and hurrying through a breakfast of bread and cheese, measured the fuel, iron ore, and limestone mix for the blast furnace. With Satin and Chet, he reviewed the production from the day before. Dozens of eager small folk, boys and girls, joined the Wintertown crew and Satin's whores to work with the furnace. Jon paid good wages with a small fraction of the ransom proceeds. Jon could have sold the steel for high prices, but he chose to armor those loyal to House Stark first. That might change, but not until the Mormonts, Robb's honor guard, and the rivermen eager to retake their castles were better equipped. After he gave orders for the furnace and the forges, Jon went to see the prisoners in the dungeons. He dealt with the captives 3 times a day, mid-morning, in the afternoon, and one last session at night. Most had little to add, peddling tales known to many, such as Tywin Lannister's dislike for his heir apparent Tyrion, or Joffrey Baratheon's cruelty at Casterly Rock. A boy who terrorized his younger siblings promised to be a dreadful man. Did Ned Stark not have any inkling before Sansa's betrothal, or did his lord father allow his friendship with Robert to blind him to the crown prince's faults? And now, that vicious child was the king. Of all Robert Baratheon's many failings, that might have been the worst, a cruel and evil heir. Snow, this armor doesn't fit, Jory Mormont complained. The steel plate hung down to the tops of her thighs, and Jory slapped her chest. It is too tight and narrow. That is not yours, that is for Daisy, your older sister, Jon said. No wonder it is too small for my teats, Jory said, laughing. Her sister Lyra helped her take the breastplate off her thick leather undershirt. You need to get fitted for plate mail. You can't just wear anything you like, Jon said. Jory smirked suggestively. And are you going to measure my breast for the plate? Jon rolled his eyes. Lenny, the brown-haired girl, rushed to his side. She wore a heavy apron and had tied her curly hair under a gray rag. Please help Jory, Theon Greyjoy sneered. Snow, you have girls working at the forge. A beauty like that belongs somewhere else. Most of the labor is done with water power. Trafe hammers, polishing stones. Lainey can measure and fit armor, or sew leather buckles as well as any. Jon said, perhaps you can help me with my breeches. They're too tight, Theon smirked to the young girl. Lainey froze and looked down at her feet. Piss off, Greyjoy. Women can fight better than you. And now they can make better armor than the crap you squids wear. What's next? Jory said. We are better sailors than any hard men to rule hard places. The Ironborn are natural warriors and raiders, Theon boasted. The best sailors in the world do more than sack villages, Jon said. He thought about Alyssa Foreman on the Sun Chaser and Corlys Velarion's expeditions on the Sea Snake. They were the greatest explorers Westeros had ever known. And the next time the Ironborn raid Bear Island, they will find that Mormonts in steel plate can crush men in iron chain. Jon left the hall to go to the dungeons. He was tempted to visit the Maiden Vault and speak to Kevan and Jaime Lannister. The lesser Lannister had no lands, but he fed 200 knights and commanded thousands more men. Kevan may not have been as cunning as Tywin, but a solid and steady follower was not to be underestimated on the battlefield. Jon played games of Civiers with the Kingslayer. Jaime's approach to the game was exactly as expected, a rash boldness that seemed winning, but once weathered, led to defeat. Jon promised a bottle of Arbor Gold if Jaime could defeat him. He was never in danger of losing the bet, although he had poured a few glasses of fine summer wine for the Lannister night. Jon hoped that the Lannisters would agree to a fair exchange of hostages, but he had no illusions about peace. Tywin burned the Riverlands for the arrest of his least liked son. The old lion would not forget or forgive the capture of his favorite child or the 3 humbling defeats. There would be conflict between Stark and Lannister in the future. The only question was whether it would be in weeks or years. Understanding exactly how Kevan and Jaime approached battle would serve House Stark well in the wars to come. That afternoon, Jon negotiated ransoms with 6 prisoners, sifting through the secrets they offered. That took time, and most men had little of value to say. Still, so long as they did not lie, Jon gave them credit for their attempts. The 7th man seemed unpromising, with his small, sharp, close-set green eyes and dirty blonde hair on a big, broad face. Your name, Jon said. Ray, my lord. I cannot pay 75 gold dragons, the man said. I am no lord. You are a mounted soldier, but no knight. Whose household do you serve? Jon asked. No one. Sir, I am a miller's son. Jon raised his eyebrows. How do you have a charger? And who trained you to fight on horse? My grandfather was a knight, Serretts. He served Roger Rayne, the Red Lion. My father fled for his life, and rather than be killed, purchased a mill at Sarsfield. We sell grain from Silver Hill to the Golden Tooth. Your grandfather died at Castamere? Jon asked. Aye, sir. Grandfather, grandmother, and my uncles, in the mines with their liege lord. Tywin Lannister had diverted water from a river into the mines of Castamere, drowning knights, women, children, and servants. The bards in the Westerlands sang the song endlessly. "And what secret do you have to sell me?" Jon asked. "I know how the Lannisters are sending food to the army. They are bringing supplies to the Golden Tooth to be transported over the river road," the man said. "Why would they do that? It would be easier to use the Gold Road that begins at Lannisport and winds south, avoiding any major castles in the Riverlands. The wagons could reach Harrenhal quickly and safely," Jon asked. Saber, but Leo Lefford is Lord of the Golden Tooth. He is a sour man and wants as much credit possible. He is in charge of the Lannister stores and supplies, so all the grain is sent to the Golden Tooth and moved east," the man said. "Interesting. Your name is Ray. What is that short for?" Jon said. "Reynard, sir. Roger Rayne's younger brother is your namesake. Your family is still loyal to the Raynes," Jon said. "My father says the Red Lion was the greatest man he ever knew, but that is in the past. I just want to live. I don't want to die in no dungeon," Reynard said. "No one does," Jon thought. "Your secret is valuable. I will reduce the ransom to 35 gold dragons, and I will offer you another reward. I wish to know how and when the supplies are being shipped to the Golden Tooth. If you serve well, the ransom will be forgiven completely, and I will also pay 10 gold dragons for any information I deem valuable enough to break the supply train," Jon said. "The army buys our grain, but how would I inform you, sir? I have no ravens. I will release prisoners every week for the next few moons. Wagons will transport men back and forth into the Westerlands. Find one of the wagon drivers and give them a note," Jon said. The man gulped. "Yes, sir, but I don't want to see any more killing. Tywin Lannister started the killing by attacking the Rivermen, and I want the fighting to end. You are not the only one who wishes to return to his family," Jon said. Jon walked out of the castle, dressed in a plain brown tunic with a gray hood over his dark locks. Small folk outside whispered and pointed to the blast furnace and did not see the White Wolf following his master. Jon left Robb's guards behind, and while he enjoyed the company of the Mormeents and Smalljan and the Karstark brothers, they were skilled at fighting, not stealth. He carried a dirk on his belt, but no sword. Ghost would be more dangerous than any sword. Dozens of merchants had erected stalls on the grounds west of River Run. They sold roasted meats, fruits, ale, wine, cloaks, hats, whetstones, pots of clay and pewter, and all sorts of other goods. Jugglers and bards wandered among the crowds, plying their trades, and so did cut-purses and whores. Jon looked for a table selling herbs and medicine. At first, Jon did not recognize Iaxley. The Wood Witch was garbed in simple brown homespun wool, revealing a slender and attractive figure. Her long, straight black hair was not bound under a gray shawl, but with a black ribbon. He followed her at a distance until she walked into a large tent. Outside, sausages sizzled over a smoky fire, but inside, a large crowd watched a troop of puppeteers working two wooden knights in a sword battle. Sir Duncan the Tall versus Lionel Baratheon. Sir Duncan won the trial by combat. Jon smiled. In song, the flea-bottom knight won every duel. Jon bought a few sausages with a copper coin. The troop leader, a large, fat Dornishman, bowed to the crowd. He looked nothing like the two others, a dark-haired, cheerful boy and a tall, slim, black-haired girl. A middle-aged, brown-haired woman alternated between selling brown ale and horns and sitting down paying customers in chairs near the front. "Now, seers, we will tell the tale of the war in the Riverlands between the wolf and the lion," the ringmaster announced. Free lion puppets strutted about the stage, roaring and trampling other animals. The arrogant lions declared themselves the mightiest of all beasts, and demanded tribute, devouring any that refused to pay. A stag objected. But the noble beast was dragged down to the ground and slain. All was lost until a majestic gray wolf attacked the lions, the big cats running away in fear. The gray wolf sat triumphantly in the middle of the stage. And this was the Grey King, the Lord of Winter, whose name was Stark. The Dornishman announced to oohs and ahs from the admiring crowd. "Did the Grey King win?" a voice shouted out. "Alas, no," the ringmaster cried. "The lions agreed to the parley." The wolf and a lion puppet sat down at a table, but the two other lions suddenly attacked from behind, biting and ripping at the wolf's back. The crowd looked on with horror at the sudden reversal. The wounded Grey King crawled back north, leaving the triumphant pride of lions to celebrate over the dead stag. But the story does not end. the Dornishman said. The tall, slim, dark-haired girl brought out another puppet, a white wolf. There was another, a bastard beast born by the stranger itself. Some say the creature was named White Fang. Others that only sorcerers and witches of Korth dare to utter the true name lest they be dragged away to burn in a fiery furnace. But White Fang came upon the lions as they feasted and killed them all. The girl puppeteer manipulated the strings with alacrity, and the white wolf battered the lions into submission. Jon was impressed by her dexterity and skill, but not by the wolf puppet, which looked nothing like Ghost. The eyes and the teeth were all wrong. What happened next? A boy asked. Did White Fang usurp his brother? Did Grey King die? Did the other lions seek revenge? Does White Fang become king, or do the stags kill him? You will have to find out later in the shows to come, the Dornishman said with an enigmatic smile, as he and the woman cleared the tent out for the next show. Jon stayed in the shadows, as the crowd left, buzzing about what they saw. Iyasha also remained and helped the ringmaster pack the puppets, while the older woman collected coins. Jon went up to the thin, dark-haired puppeteer. Even kneeling on the ground, she looked taller than most girls. "Milord," she asked with a half-smile. "You have great skill with the puppets. What is your name?" Jon asked. "Ansel, milord," she said with a slight curtsy. And the woman speaking to the ringmaster, "Do you know her name?" Jon said. "Taija, lord. My father knew her a decade ago. After Robert's rebellion, he made a great trip with his mummer's troop, all the way from Dorne to the Westerlands. I was only a babe then, but she cared for me for a little while," she said. "I apologize, sir, but we will need the tent for the next show," the fat man said. A white direwolf popped his head into the tent, sniffing hungrily. Jon sighed and bought a dozen more sausages with a few coins, and then fed them to a happy Ghost. "Begging pardon, me lord, we meant no offense," the Dornishman stuttered, his olive skin turning paler than Sansa. The other troop members stared at the ground, and Axa stood protectively in front of the boy and woman. "A bastard beast born by the stranger?" Jon smiled. "No offense taken, but my brother's wolf is Grey Wind, not Grey King, and this is Ghost." The white wolf glanced at his puppet and then bored, turned again to the sausages. "Magwir, we are simple entertainers. Tales of your hatred of Lannisters in the fiery furnace of doom have been spread by others." The man gulped. "I am curious. When you travel to other lands, what do you perform?" Jon asked. The fat man looked apologetic. "Well, in the Westerlands, the lions win. In the Reach, they like tales of chivalry and knights, so Florian the Fool and his beloved Jonquil. In the Stormlands, we sing of the victory at Ruby Ford. In Dorne, the sun triumphs over all. And in the North?" Jon asked curiously. "The North is so far and cold, and they don't have tourneys or fairs," the man said. "Aye, we just sweep down south to kill lions." "Perhaps one day you will come north," Jon said. He took 20 silver coins from his pouch and handed to the older woman. "It was an excellent performance. And your puppets are well carved. Ghost has red eyes, though, and his teeth are not dripping in blood. If you would correct that—" "Thank you, my lord," the man said. "I can paint him better, sir. Now that I have seen the dire wolf, it will be easy," Ansel said. Ghost sniffed the air, but whether he was smelling her hand or looking for more sausages, Jon could not tell. "Master Snow, you are not offended. Darren and Cedra can keep performing this play?" Asa asked hopefully. "Words do not matter. No, it does not bother me. Good fortune to you all, and I hope the crowds are plentiful during the tourney. If I could trouble you for another batch of sausages, I am sure Grey Wind will enjoy some," Jon said, fishing out some more copper coins. Jon walked back to the castle with a dour dire wolf. Jon had wrapped 24 links, intending for Ghost to share with his litter mate at the castle. The smell of the meat juice seeped through the cloth, and Ghost licked his teeth in anticipation. "You have already had over a dozen," Jon said, rubbing the white wolf's head. Naxa hurried from the tent and caught up with him. "Maester Snow, thank you for your understanding. My friends meant no harm. No matter. Better to be frightening than frightened. I know no sorcerers or witches, though, but I suppose most men from the Riverlands could not tell Dorne from Kor." Jon jested. "You know me, I am a wood witch," Axa said. With her long black hair and brown dress, she looked like a young peasant girl at the fair. When I first met you, I thought you must be at least 40 years of age, with the gray shawl and the stooped back. But you are not that old, are you, Tasha? Jon said. She froze and trembled like a fawn ready to bolt from hunters. Her hands wrapped around her chest as if slender arms could somehow protect her from a cruel world. What do you know? Not much. You came from the Westerlands. You are young, and even if you have a son of 12 named Days, you cannot be older than 30. Someone very wealthy gave you the book on herbs and other books, but I can guess quite a bit, Jon said. And what do you guess, Maester? She said. Jon looked around to make sure no one was near. They walked to the water, where the rushing current was too loud for them to be overheard. The river guarded the north, and ghosts could drive off any interlopers from the south. Tyrion is a Lannister, isn't he? That's why you fled to the Riverlands. You are a lowborn. Did they threaten to beat you? Jon said. Tersha's eyes turned cold, and she stared over the blue-white water of the Tumblestone. They did much more than that. I wish they had killed me, but I lived for my child. She stopped, and for a brief moment, Jon feared that she would throw herself into the river. But Aisha or Tasha was made of sterner stuff. What will you do, sir? Will you tell Jerry? It is your secret. Do you wish revenge on the Lannisters? Jon asked. I want to be safe, to know that Jerry will not be harmed or taken away from me, Aisha said. Jon scratched his head with his right hand. Surely the Lannisters will not harm their blood. Even they would not hurt a bastard. Tyrion is not a bastard, she said, her eyes both angry and sad. Please, you do not know what the Lannisters are capable of, what Tywin Lannister can do. He is a monster, and I want him nowhere near my son. I swear on my family's honor to keep your secret, Axa. I will tell no one, Jon said. Thank you, Maester. You are a good man, she said. How can I repay you? Jon shrugged. He doubted the truth of those words, but he did not wish to burden Asha with more worry. She had suffered enough. I am curious about something. How did you leave the Westerlands? Isn't the border watched carefully? The Golden Tooth guards the river road, and Deepden looks over the Gold Road, but there are several passages through the mountains. I can show you, but crossing that way is not easy. A small troop of mummers may do so if they wish to avoid the Tooth, she said. Jon wondered which was the right way to the Westerlands. Both the Tooth and the Gold Road were 150 miles away, due west and south respectively. The road would be easier terrain for horses and wagons, but the Lannisters would spot them easily. The Tooth was a small castle, but commanded the high ground at the border, and it was close enough to Ashmark and Sarsfield that any siege would face dangers from other Lannister bannermen. That night, Jon and Robb took dinner in Lord Tully's solar with their dire wolves who laid down near the fire. Grey Wind had taken more than his fair share of the sausages, but his brother did not complain. Both wolves rested quietly, normal for Ghost, but unusual for the rambunctious Grey Wolf. Robb ate trout roasted with bacon, and Jon had a soup of thick barley and beef stew. A dish of buttered beets sat on the table near stacks of letters and worn down and unlit candles. Edmure Tully had come earlier that night to talk of the tourney that began in 2 days. He smiled more now, excited for the coming pageantry. Edmure had grown a fiery red beard, and with his fine wool doublet in Tully colors, emblazoned with leaping silver trout, looked every bit the heir of River Run. The door to the solar was open so lords and knights could speak to the two brothers. Edmure had appointed his good friend Mark Piper as master of the games. Jon was more interested in hearing from the Manderley brothers, who Robb had tasked with watching for any strangers or unknown knights. Rubbermen had volunteered to patrol the grounds to ensure security, although Blackwoods and Bracken men were separated. Olivar Frey opened the door, escorting an excited young Mallister. Lord Stark, the men on the east wall have sighted my father's banners only a few miles away, Sir Patrick said. Good, they have returned. That means Tywin's messenger is near, Robb said. He was anxious but still eager to begin negotiations. Brynden Tully entered the room with his sister. Lord Stark, we have spotted banners approaching to the west and south. West and south, who approaches from the west? Robb said. A golden lion on a crimson field, and others that we cannot see in the dusk, Catelyn said. Titus Blackwood and his 3 sons burst through the doors. My lord, a host of men come from the north. Do you think we are under attack? Brynden Blackwood asked. Robb shook his head. We have 20,000 men, well rested, and the castle is stocked with plentiful food and supplies. Even a fool would refrain from attacking us. At most, Tywin Lannister has 30,000 men. He would not win a battle here. He paused for a second. Find out more from the men on the walls. Edmure, you should meet Lord Maester when he returns. Mother, we may need to prepare for our guests. Robb waited until the cellar emptied, leaving only the two brothers and their wolves. He ordered Olivar to stand guard outside the closed door and ensure that no one would eavesdrop. Jon Snow nodded. He opened a cage hanging in the corner and released a black raven out the window. The raven flew in an awkward circle until Jon sat down and his eyes turned milky white. Jon directed the bird south, flying over the sandstone walls. He saw several dozen mounted men with banners from the Reach, a golden horn of plenty spilling out fruits on a white field bordered by yellow, a white sun and chevron and orange, and apples on yellow, both red and green. He wondered if Owen Fossaway was in the group. The bird turned west. A small battalion of armed men approached with a white flag of parley. The sigil of the Gold Lion was foremost, but there was also an orange burning tree on a smoky field and a gold pile on a sky blue field with a golden sun to the left. He headed north. The group there was the least in number, but made up of hard men riding garrons and shaggy ponies. The sigils were all variations on one theme, a silver scythe on a black field. The man at the front was armored in plate with oversized pauldrons and riding under a scythe quartered with a peacock. Finally, the raven turned east to a sea of golden lions, the banners flying proudly. At least 100 soldiers in plate mail and chargers rode under the Lannister colors, accompanying a wheelhouse. Jon allowed the bird to rest atop a pine tree. Jon turned to his brother. The two dire wolves paced restlessly in the solar. Enemies to the west, enemies to the east. The Southerners are from the Reach House, Merryweather, Ashford, and Fossaway. The men from the west are coming to Parley, House Merbrand, House Lefford, and House Lannister. They must have ridden from the Golden Tooth. The north are Ironborn, House Harlaw, but several cadet branches, and the east is all Lannister. Can you see the messenger? Robb asked. The soldiers are escorting a wheelhouse. Jon relaxed and willed the raven to fly closer. There were several men sitting, an older man with a red cloak over his mailed shirt, a thin black-haired man with a stubble of a beard, and a shy, skinny boy with thin hair. Jon's eyes were attracted to the dwarf with stubby legs, a jutting forehead, and mismatched eyes, green and black. Some strands were so blonde to be almost white, but in the dusk, the hair looked blonde and brown. The dwarf stared at the castle with an intense, uncomfortable gaze. Tyrion Lannister. He is Tywin's representative, Jon said. You do understand how guest right works, Lannister? Robb Stark asked impatiently. Robb had decreed that for the length of the tourney, only one gate would be used for visitors to enter and exit River Run. Supplies, wagons of ale and servants bringing in steers and lambs to be slaughtered, still moved under watchful eyes on boats through the water gate on the north and the southern bridge over the Red Fork, but the visitors were allowed only through the west gate. A large crowd of small folk and nobles watched the commotion that morning as the bridge was jammed full. Dozens of lords and knights had petitioned to enter River Run, including Tyrion Lannister and other Westermen. On the castle side, Robb stood with Jon at his side, supported by his honor guard, the Blackfish, and Edmure Tully. Robb's longsword remained sheathed, but northern soldiers ringed the castle walls, with arrows nocked and spears ready. But why should I swear guest right to you, boy? This is the Tully Castle, Tyrion said. He was playing for time, and the imp and his companions, except for the squire, all wore mail and fingered swords. The Lannister captain and Tyrion's sworn sword stood next to him, in front of other Westermen and men from the Reach and the Iron Islands. You are here to negotiate with House Stark. Their armies broke the siege and captured the prisoners, so Lord Stark will be your host while you are here, the Blackfish said, his tone making it clear that he would prefer a very short stay for the imp. Lord Robb is also Hoster Tully's grandson. House Stark has joined House Tully in sponsoring this tourney to celebrate my father's life. Edmure added, yes, the great Hoster Tully. We are so lucky to honor his great achievements. Very well, Tyrion drawled. Servants came forward with the plate of salt and bread. Tyrion took off his steel gauntlets, and as he nibbled the bread, his squire loosened the breastplate and began to unbuckle the gilded steel armor. Tyrion sighed with relief as he discarded the vambraces and spolders. The castle steward handed out more plates of food, and Jon checked to make sure everyone took a bite of bread. Any who wish to enter the river run must disarm. So long as you do not attack my men or anyone in the castle, you will not be attacked, and I will protect you from harm. This I swear on honor of my house before the old gods and the new, Robb said. The pug-nosed, yellow-haired knight, standing 5 feet from Tyrion, grunted, but handed his helm and hand and a half-sword with a lion for a pommel over to a squire. He began to shuck off his gilded ringmail, and the other Westermen followed his lead. Men started to divest their shields and swords. That morning, the knights from the Reach wore well-fitted mail hauberks with 3/4-length sleeves, reaching down to the mid-thighs. Chain was cheaper than plate, but a quality mail shirt was expensive, both in the amount of iron wire and the skill required. It was certainly more costly than the scavenged mishmash that the Ironborn wore for protection. The squids did not sew, but they also did not smith. The Vikings had iron, but not steel. That explained why the Ironborn had been losing wars since Black Heron was roasted alive. The one exception to that wore plate under his black and silver cloak. He also refused to give up his sword. I will not relinquish my family blade. The black-haired man speaker was tall, with strong arms and a long, austere face. The sword was sheathed, but Jon could see the moonstone pommel and the elaborate guard, like sea creatures twisted about on golden waves. You cannot have a weapon in River Run, Robb said. Nightfall is my ancestral sword. My lord cousin gave it to me when I was knighted, and the blade has never left my sight. Not when I sail or sleep, the man said. Jon had never seen a Valyrian sword besides the great sword ice. Archmaester Thurgood claimed there were 227 Valyrian steel blades left in Westeros, but the man must have been senile when he wrote those words. Jon knew of less than 20 such blades, and half of those had been long lost like Blackfire and Dark Sister. Nightfall should belong to House Greyjoy. Dalton Greyjoy claimed the sword first, the Theon said. And your house lost it, nephew, when the Red Kraken died, the man replied. Your name? Robb asked. Serretts Harlaw of Grey Garden and the 10 Towers, he said. How is an Ironborn cunt a knight? The Grey Jon asked. The Iron Islands were not exactly known for chivalry or anything besides reaving and raping. Harris Harlaw stared hard at Lord Umber before responding. I was sent to squire with my mother's family, House Serrett. I was knighted after winning a tournament. There were knights, and then there were knights. Many second and third sons of nobility were awarded their spurs due to favors, coin, or not-so-hidden threats. Sir Raymond Frey and his Frey brothers were proof of that. But winning knighthood in a battle, that was an entirely different matter. Barristan Selmy had won his knighthood by unhorsing Duncan the Tall in a joust. Brendan Tully had been knighted for his courage in the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Jaime Lannister had been knighted by Sorther Dane for facing the Smiling Knight. The Knight of Grey Garden clearly belonged to the latter group, and armed with a Valyrian blade would be a deadly opponent in any melee. May we see the blade? Jon asked. Serretts nodded and drew Nightfall out of the leather scabbard, decorated with scythes and peacocks. The steel was dark and smoky, with a rippled pattern like teardrops of flowing water. Nightfall was a longsword, not a great sword like ice, but it was a fine weapon and attracted many admiring glances. I can see why you would wish to keep such a treasure, Robb said. But, Sir Harris, do you follow the Seven? I thought Balon Greyjoy had banned the faith in the Iron Islands, Jon said. He did, but before that, my cousin Lord Harlaw had septons at 10 Towers to care for his books, and my mother worshipped the Seven. I took my vows anointed with the 7 oils and stood vigil at a sept, Harris said. Would you swear on the gods that you follow that you will not use the weapon in the castle, except in self-defense? Jon said. I, Lord Stark, I will swear that on the faith of the 7 and the houses of both my father and mother, that I will honor guest right. Sir Harris said, I will not wear armor, nor strike any man who does not attack me. Then I accept, Sir Harris, Robb said. The burly Lannister man with a big square chin looked displeased at the exchange. When can we see the prisoners? And you are, Robb asked. Tyrion Lannister stepped forward. Lord Stark, allow me to introduce my companions. I am not your bloody companion, Tyrion. I came from the west. Sir David Lannister, and I am here with my Marbrand and Lefford cousins to see the prisoners, he said. You are here for the squires, Jon realized. Aye, the Westerlords want to make certain they return safe. My cousin, Jaime, says they are not harmed. I hope for your sake that is true, Davin said in a belligerent tone, glaring at Jon with bright hazel eyes. Save your threats for someone who cares. The squires are guarded in the North Gatehouse. They will be released to you once we receive the ransoms. The other prisoners are in the dungeons, except of course your uncles and cousins, Jon said. And now for my companions, Tyrion said breezily, as if he had not been interrupted. This is my squire, Podrick of House Payne. This is the captain of the guards, Vylar of House Broom. These loyal men are leal servants of House Lannister. Like a showman, he extended his right hand to a large company of well-armed red cloaks, more than 80 in number, and perhaps as many as 100. The gesture was oddly reminiscent of the Dornish ringmaster. And this is Bronn of House... You wouldn't know the house, my lord. A shithole in a village. The black-haired man said his sword was ugly, but Jon had no doubt that Tyrion's sworn shield could use the weapon well. We would like to introduce ourselves as well. A lumpy-nosed man with messy orange hair and a sigil of a horn of plenty spilling out grapes, apples, onions, and turnips. Jon thought, perhaps unfairly, that this might be the night of fruits and vegetables. I am Ceroin Merryweather. This is Cero Robert and Cero Andro Ashford. And these are the Fossaways, Ser Brian, Cero Edwid. Master Snow, it is good to see you. Owen Fossaway beamed, a broad smile on his square face and pug nose. He wore a brown tunic with a red doublet belted high up on his waist. His simple clothes stood out among the finely dressed knights, but his cheer was genuine compared to the other reachmen. Owen, what are you doing here? Why are you not at the Citadel? Jon asked. Lord Fossaway thought it would be good for me to return to Cider Hall. I have also bought our steward, Arslan, with me on my travels, Owen said. A handsome brown-haired man in his 20s smiled and bowed slightly. He was quite young for a position of such responsibility. Sir Harris cleared his throat. My men are Harslaws. You are welcome, Serretts. Tomorrow night the tourney will start with a feast. You may visit the castle, and I offer you meat and drink. I promise you fair treatment and hospitality on my honor as a Stark, Robb said, and the Northmen parted to allow entrance into the castle. Tyrion, followed by Bronn, Podrick Payne, and Vylar with a dozen Lannister guards stepped forward over the bridge. The visitors staggered at the heat radiating from the blast furnace. Hot flames, yellow-orange with streaks of white, billowed out from the top of the 20-feet-tall structure. The bricks glowed with a hellish light, and a crew of boys and girls rushed about, taking finished ingots in stock to be hammered out by trip hammers or polished with stones. Ormont warriors were being measured and dressed as they tried on the steel breastplates, helmets, and gauntlets. What in the seven hells is that? Asked a gaping Daemon Lannister, sweat beading on face. Is that a furnace? But how can it be so tall? Tyrion said. Jon, you have figured out the riddle of steel, just like you told the Conclave. Owen approached more closely and pointed out to the steward and other southern knights the water wheel and how it was connected to the hammers and the bellows. Yes, it is a blast furnace and it produces molten steel. Archmaester Norrin was wrong. You do not need a higher temperature. You need more air, Jon said, waving to the hard-working crew. Chet and Clytus barely looked up, so intent on keeping the production line humming. And when did you build this, Maester? Harris Harlaw said respectfully, We finished the furnace 8 days ago. We have been producing steel plate since, Jon said. Master Snow will give a suit of armor to the victor of the joust and the melee, Edmund Tully said. A suit of armor? Not much of a prize. I suppose House Tully can only afford weapons and fish, Tyrion japed. You have not seen the armor, Lannister. And mayhap it is not gilded with gold leaf or decorated with little cats on the shoulders. But I can assure you that it can block arrows and swords as well as anything from Casterly Rock. The Blackfish said, I doubt that. My father has hired master armors from as far as Quhor. Their skill and craftsmanship is unparalleled in the Seven Kingdoms. They know the mysteries of reforging Valyrian steel. They do not forge armor. They make works of art. We have seen how well those works of art stand up in fighting. They didn't help your men the last 3 times, Robb said. 3 battles do not make a war, Tyrion said. No, but 3 victories are better than 3 defeats, Robb replied. I would like to see my brother, Jaime, but I would also like to meet with your advisors, perhaps over a meal, Tyrion said. My advisors, why would you need to meet with them, Lannister? Robb said. You are the young wolf. Surely you heed the counsel of older and wiser men. After all, you may know how to swing a sword and blow a war horn, but there is much more to war than that. Tyrion said with a smile. I negotiate for the army, as heir to Winterfell. I speak for my father, the Lord Paramount of the North. Robb said with clenched teeth. I am not certain the Starks will be Lord Paramounts for long. After all, treason is a serious offense. A low rumble of anger went through the Northmen. And besides, I am here representing the Iron Throne. The message of the Iron Throne should be heard by your bannermen, Tyrion said. You represent Joffrey Hill, a bastard born of incest, Robb snapped. Your only proof is an accusation from Stannis Baratheon, hardly a trustworthy source. Joffrey sits on the throne, and I am sure the Lords of the North would like to hear what the crown is offering to House Stark. After all, you owe your authority to your lords, Tyrion said. The Lord of Winterfell rules the North. Our lords are sworn by oath to Robb as heir. By what authority do you have to speak for the crown? Jon said. My father Tywin Lannister is the hand of the king and the father of the Queen Dowager. King Joffrey will follow his counsel, Tyrion said. Joffrey Hill may submit to Tywin, but not to you. Robb speaks for our house, but you have no authority to negotiate, do you? Jon said. My father will listen to my words, Tyrion said. Will he? I spoke to your bannermen. They say that Tywin wanted to drown you at birth, and that if he could trade your head for Jaime, he would do it without thinking. Jon said. That may be true, but I am here as his representative, Tyrion said. You are here as a messenger boy. You will take our demands and bring them back to Tywin. He will accept or reject our proposals, not you, Jon said. Lannister, you may speak at lunch, and then we will discuss our terms in private so you can bring them back to your father, Robb said. I thank you for the kindness. Tyrion bowed mockingly. Robb waited until the solar door was closed before turning his fuming face around to face his brother. That little shit. Who does he think he is to mock me? To claim I am a green boy who needs to run to my lords for their approval. Tyrion Lannister is trying to get under your skin. He wants to make you angry, Jon said. Well, he is succeeding, Robb snapped. He's a clever man, but besides snide comments, what can he do? In fact, I am puzzled why he is here at all, Jon said. What do you mean, Robb asked. Tywin Lannister will be the one to approve any exchange. He does not wish to come to the castle, but he only needs a messenger. Why send his son with 100 guards? Jon said. The Lannisters are proud. The father wishes to appear strong, even if he has lost battles, Robb guessed. Strength comes not from victories, not the size of your forces. Otherwise, the Reach would more respected. And as for the Reach and the Ironborn, I am puzzled at why they are here, as well, Jon said. You don't think the Harlaws or the Merryweathers and Fossaways are here for a tourney? You may admire Hoster Tully as your grandfather, but why would an Ironborn or a Reachman care? Owen Fossaway is a good man, and as a friend to share a mug of ale or cider, there is none better. But he is not a warhound. He should be at the Citadel. And why is his steward here? In the Reach, the stewards oversee castle and farms, not tourneys and arms, Jon said. I wonder too about this Harlaw knight. Do you think he is carrying a message for Theon? Robb asked. Possibly, although if so, that would be foolish. If I were an Ironborn trying to contact Greyjoy, I would just bribe a whore. Walking through a castle as the only Ironborn knight attracts attention. Surely this Harris Harlow has other motives, else he is a dunce, Jon said. You are suspicious of everyone, Jon. I am surprised you do not wonder about me, Robb joked. Perhaps I do. I may have spies watching you, Jon jabbed in return. Well, the Lannisters will reveal their intentions soon enough. As for Harlaw and the Reach, I will find out more. Jon left the solar and went back to the yard. Outside, under the interested eyes of visitors and small folk, his crew, dripping in sweat from the heat, worked on steel shields and breastplates to outfit the Mormonts. The 3 Fossaways were there with their steward, peering with interest at the furnace. Other soldiers watched, including some who sparred with the armored bears. Helpful servants from River Run bought fresh jugs of water to the workers and the fighters. Jon was particularly proud about the shields. Most Northmen used large wooden shields, wide at the top and tapered at the bottom, with an iron rim. The shields would be large enough to protect the neck of the horse and the thighs of a rider when fighting from a mounted stance. For some of these shields, Jon ordered strips of steel to make stronger rims and reinforced bands on the back, but a kite shield would be too heavy if made out of pure steel. And just as importantly, steel plate was strong enough to take the brunt of the defensive work. Jon had designed a smaller shield, heart-shaped and less elongated. Such a shield was vulnerable to masked archers, but there were few companies like the Raven's Teeth left. For hand-to-hand combat, though, the new design, with the twin advantages of speed and sturdiness, would be a surprise to opponents in battle. "Oi, Snow." Jon could not tell whether the speaker was Lyra or Jory. Both lady warriors wore a bassinet, an open-faced helmet with a slightly pointed top to deflect the force of any attack. They had attached a visor, hinged at the center of the helmet, that stuck out into the point of a muzzle with holes. The Mormon girls wanted to look like the sigils of their house, but Jon thought the helmet was bird-like, a steel raven ready for battle. Chet and Clytus had made a clever design. The extended face guard deflected attacks and made it easier to breathe and could be taken off if arrows were not a threat. Lyra had raised her visor and grinned. "Thanks for the mace." May Mormont and her girls had carried wooden maces, a thick club with the head reinforced with metal studs and nails. Jon had forged the four ladies' new weapons. The wooden shaft remained, but the all-steel head had 6 flanges with 3 spikes each. At the top there was a sharp steel spike that could be pushed like a spear point through a head or a chest. The mace looked like a holy water sprinkler, but the Mormonts would offer a very different blessing than a fat septon. Any man who underestimated the shape heirs might not live to regret it. Jon beckoned the crew to come over. Jon had given his lieutenants full responsibility to hire as many workers as needed, and the operations had been greatly expanded. There were dozens and dozens of new faces, looking around with irritants. In a time of war, few small folk could have expected a steady job, plentiful wages, and a place of safety in the castle. They were anxious that their good fortunes not turn for the worse. "The tournament begins tomorrow. You have done an excellent job and produced many sets of armor and weapons. I know many of you have only worked for me the past week, but I am pleased with your labor. It would please me greatly for all of you to enjoy the tourney. So, after this last batch, I would release you to attend the games and to walk the grounds," Jon said. "Me lord, can we return to your service afterwards?" a young girl asked. "You will not leave my service. I will pay you 10 stags a day, even for the next few days. We have produced more plate mail than I expected, and there will be a great deal of work after the tourney. For now, I wish you to watch the jousts, jugglers, and the melee," Jon said. His steward Satin had already bought a sack of clinking coins, ready to hand out stags. "I heard there is a puppet show that," Jerry said. "Ah, yes, I am now White Fang, the bastard beast of the north." Latan chuckled. "Words are wind." Satin, "Give everyone a few extra coppers. You should all go see the puppets. The Dornish are famous for these shows, and this one is well done." "Me lord, is there anything else for us to do?" Satin asked. Jon thought briefly about asking them to watch the many visitors. Jerry was quick, and it would be easy for a smart, perceptive boy to spy on visiting knights. But his workers were young, and they were not yet men or women grown. Putting them in danger would not be right. I wish for all of you to be careful. A tourney may attract thieves and cut-purses. Make sure you are safe. You are all valuable, and I wish you to return unharmed in a few days' time." "Me lord, what more can we do today?" another girl asked. "Finish this batch of steel. Pour out the ingots and finish armor or weapons you are working on. And then in the afternoon, feel free to leave. Enjoy the puppets." Jon smiled. Jon was sitting in a room near the dungeons when a man pushed past his guards. He looked up from the stack of signed notes to the long face of the dark-haired Ironborn. Serrett Harris Harlaw held his hands in front, showing that he held no weapon. "They say you are in charge of the prisoners," the Ironborn said. "I, Jon Snow, what can I help you with?" Jon said. "I wish to pay the ransom for several of your captives," Harris said. "But, of course, House Serrett. You wish to free men from your mother's house. But I sent the note to Silver Hall, and you came from the north. You do not even know which prisoners I hold." The knight gave a grim smile. "I don't, but I would be pleased to pay your price." Jon touched the tips of his fingers together. "Why?" "House Serrett has always looked down on me. Lord Serrett loves my mother, who is his sister, but my cousins consider me half a bastard and base-born. Word has spread to the islands about the battles in the Riverlands. I want them to know, my mother's relatives, to know that it was her son who saved Serrett lives. Harris said. How did your parents meet, an Ironborn and a lady of a Westerland house? Jon asked. My mother was captured in a raid. Another Ironborn was about to rape her. But my father stabbed him through the back, he said. And then they fell in love? Jon asked, perplexed. What? No, in the confusion, my mother managed to escape by knifing a man. Her brothers rescued her, but no one would consider her hand in marriage. She was ruined, and her father wanted to send her to the Silent Sisters. Many moons later, my father came to Silver Hill and offered to marry her as his Iron Wife. He had not forgotten the little lady who could kill a man and swim for shore. Harris said dryly. Jon wondered if that story was considered the height of romance by the Ironborn. I hold a Sir Harwin and Sir Harlan Serrett as prisoners. There are also 8 men-at-arms. I have 1,000 gold dragons, Maester, Harris said. I would take 250 for each knight and 50 more per man-at-arm, but they will need to swear an oath to not attack the Northern Army or the Riverlands again. Jon said, Harwin and Harlan are annoying little shits. They will not like that I am the one freeing them, and refuse to swear an oath. House Serrett is a proud house, Harris said. No one would ever think a preening peacock was humble. I do not care what they like. The 1,000 dragons are worth more to me than 2 knights, Jon said. They waited for the guards to drag the Serretts out of the dungeon. The Knight of Grey Garden was a man of few words, so Jon broke the silence. Are you here for Theon Greyjoy as well? He is still a ward of House Stark, and we would not take kindly if you took him away. The knight drummed his fingers on the table. Is Theon a wolf or a kraken? He has always been proud to be the prince of the Iron Islands, Jon said. The Ironborn have no princes, only captains and a Lord Reaver. Every man is king on his ship. Harris said, If Theon is a kraken, then he can free himself to return to the sea. If he is a wolf, then he would not be welcome at Pike. Only force is valued among the Iron Islands. We are strong men who do not follow the laws of the Green Lands. But those Green Lands rule the Ironborn. Every time the Krakens rise up, they have lost. Dalton Greyjoy, Dagon Greyjoy, Valen Greyjoy. All 3 have been crushed. Jon said. The Ironborn knight gave a rueful smile. The Ironborn are strong, but not smart. My cousin, Roderick Harlaw, says there must be a better way. But the Greyjoys have not found one. The Lord of Pike wishes to follow the old ways, of salt, blood, and iron. The room opened and 2 dark blonde-haired prisoners were thrust in with swords at their backs. They looked and smelled like shit, but Jon was glad that Hallis had forced the Serretts to wash. The bruises on their faces were fresh, but whether that was from the guards or squabbles in the dungeon, Jon did not know or care. Harwin and Harlan, I am here to pay your ransom. The Ironborn smirked. Before you are freed, you and your men must swear an oath to not attack the North and the Riverlands. I will have your names on this parchment, Jon said. Never, you bastard. The older Serrett cried. The old lion will destroy House Stark, and we will be avenged. Even if we die in these miserable dungeons, the singers will know that House Serrett has no rival. Like many knights, the Serretts had more pride than sense. After all, they were peacocks. Very well, Serrett Harris wished to pay the ransom so the Serretts would know that he was their savior. Instead, I will give you and your men to the Ironborn as thralls. You can work in the fields and mines of the Iron Islands and eat salted fish for the rest of your lives, however long they will be. I am sure House Harris will be pleased to have Serretts serving them, Jon said. You would sell us into slavery? Have you no honor? The younger Serrett said. A thrall is not a slave. Your children can become Ironborn, that is, if you ever have any, and if a free man kills you, he will have to pay. Wergild. Harris said, I will enjoy visiting Silver Hill and telling your sisters and your wives to visit you in Harlaw. The line between a thrall, a slave, and a small folk was blurry. Slaves, at least, would get fed and housed. Some lords could care less whether their small folk starved. Even in the north, there were lands where the life of a peasant was nasty, brutish, and short. The 2 Serretts turned from outrage to resignation. We will make the oaths, the old man said bitterly. All of you, including the men-at-arms, and you had best behave. If you should attack a Northman or a Riverlander, you will be imprisoned again, Jon said. Jon waited with Maggie and Mormont for the Lannister men to finish speaking with Sir Jaime and the other captives that morning. Jon relied on Mormont guards, fierce and loyal men and women, to patrol the maiden vaults. The Lady She-Bear wondered aloud whether it was a good idea to allow Tyrion and Davin Lannister to visit alone, with guards posted outside the door. The dwarf had bought his entourage, the squire, the sworn sword, the captain of the guards, and 10 red cloaks. Sir Davin had come alone. "No doubt they are plotting against us," Maega said. She wore her steel breastplate and carried the newly forged war mace. "Of course they are. But there are 24 guards on the bottom floor, and 3 more on each floor of the keep. We have watchers outside the keep as well. All the guards are armed, and the Lannister men are not," Jon said. "I will be more comfortable when these Lannisters leave. They say the Impits is a devilish creature, full of cunning and tricks," Maegak said. "They say that about me as well," Jon said. The she-bear chuckled. "Yes, but you are on our side. If you are worried, I will have ghost patrol with your daughters at the keep. I promised Robb to safeguard the prisoners, and I will not break my word," Jon said. "I do not like the imp's looks. He has a smirk on his face, like he knows something that we do not. He may think he is clever, but he trades in deceit," Lady Mormont said. The imp was clever, Jon thought, but the constant smirking was a bit much, and a man could be deceitful without looking to the part. But more to the point, what was Tyrion's game? For once, fish was not on the menu. The Tullys served roast of lamb with savory garlic and goat cheese. The main dish was accompanied by a turnip green and red fennel salad and a creamy chestnut soup. Even the Reachman admired the sweet chestnuts, roasted over a fire and then cooked with vegetables and butter. Wine spiced with cloves and cinnamon and ale in horns were served to the lords and knights who had heard gossip of Tyrion Lannister's words that morning. That would be almost all of them, Jon thought, as he looked around the crowded great hall. At the head table, overlooking the hall, Robb stood proud, next to Sarah Brendan and Sarah Edmure. Lady Stark had commandeered the final seat, on the argument that she was both a Tully and Stark, and would balance the two. Jon sat at the second table with the Lords of the North. The Great Jon, Lady Mormont, and the Manderleys had insisted, and Jon agreed, despite reservations from other lords. Tyrion and Davin sat at the third table with their guards further away. The lamb was nearly finished when Tyrion Lannister stood up to speak. He was a small man, but as he walked the head table, River Run guards went to intercept him, before Robb waved him off. The hall went silent, waiting for his words. He did not disappoint. "My lords, I have come to ask you to bend the knee," Tyrion said. "Do so now, and the Iron Throne will grant you mercy." Nervous laughter broke out in the crowd. "We are winning, Lannister," Robb said. "For now, yes, you have won a few victories. But my father still has his host, 30,000 strong. We have men at King's Landing, and King Joffrey can raise larger hosts. We have the royal fleet and the ships at Lannisport. The North is but one kingdom. It will lose when faced with the might of the others," Tyrion said. "What others?" "The Crownlands and the Stormlands do not follow you. The Baratheons claim that Joffrey is pure Lannister," Robb said. "Men are always willing to believe what they wish. For now, they believe these lies about my dear nephew, but when Stannis is beaten, they will rush to pledge their loyalty to Joffrey Baratheon. This is how men have always behaved," Tyrion said. "How many rebellions have ever succeeded against the Iron Throne? Only 1 in 300 years. "Yes, but that was the last one, and fought by the Starks," Sarah Brendan said. "But the Starks had allies then. The North had the Riverlands, the Vale, and the Stormlands. Now, what do you have? My father's host controls most of the Riverlands. The Vale is silent. The Stormlands are split between 2 Baratheons," Tyrion said. "Even alone, we defeated your armies," Robb said doggedly. "You have brave fighters in the north, that is true, but you only faced part of the Lannister host. The Westerlands are the richest lands in the 7 kingdoms. We have the best armor and many knights. We have the wealth to hire companies of sellswords, and the Iron Throne can find more allies. With marriages and appointments, other kingdoms will pledge their fealty. You are but one region of the 7 kingdoms. A single land can be crushed by the throne. Heed the advice of those wiser than you. Bend the knee before you lose your heads. Bend the knee to save your lives," Tyrion said. Pretty words, Lannister, but you took Ned prisoner. We want him back as Warden of the North, the Grey Chon said, and we will return him, but he will have to take the black, Tyrion replied. No, my father did nothing wrong. He is a man of honor and would not commit treason. You will return him unharmed, and he will remain Lord of Winterfell. Robb said. Tyrion appeared stricken with sadness, and Jon wondered how much of this was a mummer's show. The dwarf knew that Robb would never allow their lord father to be branded a traitor. Then I truly am sorry, because with the wealth of Casterly Rock and the might of the Iron Throne, the rebellion will fail. Jaime stood up. Did Lord Tywin send you to tell us how much you care for the North, and how the Lannisters wish to spare us any harm? If you are wise, you will bend the knee, before my father takes your heads, Tyrion said. In this life, nothing is certain except that winter comes. We may lose our heads, it is true. But what if we prevail? What then? Jon spoke to a suddenly quiet room. My brother speaks the truth. We have won 3 battles at the Whispering Woods, at River Run, and at the Broken Bridge. 3 more, and we will see how well Joffrey Hill can hold the Iron Throne. Robb said, You have spoken to my lords in public. Now we will speak in private. It was the Rivermen who were most concerned about the meeting. They crowded Robb and his Solar, pleading to be heard, even as Sir Brynden attempted to clear the room. Lord Stark, if you return to the North, then our lands will be burnt and pillaged again. A dejected Lymandari said. The 9-year-old tried to stay strong, but was on the verge of tears. Lord Stark, without your soldiers the lions will devour us, and rape and kill our people. We have already seen their actions, and they will want revenge for your victories. Morva Blackwood said grimly. Lady Wynn only sobbed while Ravella Smallwood and Barbara Bracken supported her. The sense of doom in the air was strong, as if the tyranny of the Lannisters supported by the crown was inevitable, if any negotiation resulted in the Wolf's retreat. My lords and ladies, I understand your concerns. The northern armies came to rescue my father, Lord Stark, but we will not forget the Riverlands. My father's last action as hand was to order the mountain's capture. We will bring the guilty to justice, Robb said. Jon waited until the grumbles of the Rivermen receded in the distance before turning to his brother. Bring the guilty to justice? Tywin Lannister is guilty of these crimes, and you are not likely to capture him unless you bring down the Iron Throne, Jon said. I know. But what else can I say? That we will allow the guilty to run free, Robb said. We should not say empty words, or make promises we cannot keep, Jon said. Where is Tyrion Lannister? Why does the imp take so long to come to a meeting? Robb said, He visits his brother often. The guards say he spends much time with Jaime alone, Jon said. At Winterfell, he did the same. His sister despises him, but the Kingslayer, his niece and nephew like him, Robb said. He gets along well with Joffrey, Jon asked. No one likes Joffrey. He is a total shit. Except with the Queen, Robb said. Lady Stark entered the Solar with her Uncle Brynden. Behind them, a smirking Tyrion Lannister stood. With Bronn and Podrick Payne, Jon realized then the nature of Tywin's younger son. He may have been a dwarf, but he had his pride. That was why he was so sharp of tongue. He had a great desire to show his wit. Tyrion may have been clever, but the pride in his intellect could prove to be a weakness. My lords, I would hope that my brother Jaime could also attend these talks. Seeing as he is your greatest prize, Tyrion said. He spoke loudly, so everyone in the hall heard his words. Robb ignored the imp. Mother, Sir Brynden, do you plan to attend the talks? I do not wish to presume, Lord Stark, but if you ask for my advice, the Blackfish said. Robb exchanged a quick look of understanding with his brother before he answered. Sir, you are most welcome. Sit by my brother's side, while my mother sits next to mine. The heir to Winterfell ignored Lady Stark's grimace. Lord Tyrion, let us begin. What of my request? That Sir Jaime join us in these talks, Tyrion said. Tell me, if this was King's Landing and we were speaking with the throne, would our Lord Father be allowed to attend, or would he be stuck in the black cells? Jon asked. Tyrion blanched a bit and then recovered. I cannot say what King Joffrey would do. Even a green boy could see that he was lying. The dwarf waddled in and sat down, flanked by Bronn and his squire Podrick Payne. Jon was surprised that Sardavan had not come. Then the Kingslayer can stay in the keep as our guest, Robb said. Will you allow my men to see him and to bring news of the West in our talks? Tyrion asked. If they are unarmed and mean no harm, then yes, Robb said with some asperity. Enough delay. We wish to negotiate. We offer your brother Jaime and your uncle a cabin. My father wants assurances of peace in the Riverlands, Tyrion said. The Starks and the Tullys raised their eyebrows at the brazen disregard for the Lannister aggression. Tywin Lannister broke that peace. Lord Stark and our sisters will be returned, our guards and men in King's Landing released. The ancestral sword ice-handed back. These are our terms, and the Lannister army will withdraw and commit no more violence against the Rivermen. Robb said, I am afraid some of that will be impossible. The Stark men and women in the capital were slain. When my sister ordered their arrests, the gold cloaks were not gentle, Tyrion said. Men and women, the entire household? Robb asked aghast. Jory Cassio, Septa Mordane? The dwarf nodded. You killed the Septa. She was a harmless old woman, Catelyn Stark said in disgust. My sweet sister did. I would like to say she wanted to prevent any escape, but I think she only wanted to mount their heads on spikes outside the Red Keep. There is another thing. We do not have both of your sisters, Tyrion said. You lost my sister? Robb yelled. We cannot find Lord Stark's younger daughter, Tyrion admitted. Oh, my sweet child, Lady Stark wailed. What happened to Arya? Was she attacked by your men? Jon said with a calm he did not feel. I do not know. I was not at King's Landing. All we have heard is that she disappeared, Tyrion said. You claim to speak for the Iron Throne, yet that throne butchered good men and lost my sister, Robb said. I understand your anger, but I was not at King's Landing, and neither were my father and my brother. We had nothing to do with this, Tyrion said. Your entire misbegotten family is responsible. Would your bastard nephew have done this without your father's army? We will have revenge. It may take weeks or years, but if she is dead, the Lannisters will pay in blood. You will remember Arya Stark. Jon said in a cold voice. Tyrion shrugged. Terrible things happen in war. This is not a battle, Robb said. They arrested my father, my sisters, and our household. As for Lord Stark, he cannot return to Winterfell. He declared the king to be a bastard. Your family will not be attainted, but he must take the black, Tyrion said. The king is a bastard, and the North will not accept this punishment for Lord Stark. He is no traitor, just as Joffrey is no Baratheon, Robb said. The offer is a good one. Your father will be alive, and Lady Sansa will be returned north. The sword ice will be given back, and there will be no bloodshed in the Riverlands. Surely that is better than war, Tyrion said. Robb, perhaps we should consider this peace. At least then, Lord Stark and Sansa will be safe. With Bran hurt and Arya missing, I could not bear the loss of another child, Catelyn said. The Blackfish spoke to his niece. Catelyn, peace is sweet, but only if it lasts. Why hammer your sword into a plow if you must reforge it again on the morrow? Mother, Bran is hurt and Arya is missing because of the Lannisters. Our answer is no. Your offer is pathetic. My father must be freed and remain Lord of Winterfell, Robb insisted. My father will not allow that. It would, Tyrion began. Then he is a fool. Lord Stark had sworn oaths to the crown. As Lord of Winterfell, Ned Stark can call the banners back. If he takes the black, then Robb will be Lord. And we will seek revenge for Lannister crimes against House Stark and the Riverlands, Jon said. Young boys prefer war, but old men know the costs. Peace is better than death, my lords. Tywin offers to return your father and your sister. You are too young to play the game of thrones with their lives, Tyrion said. Jon laughed bitterly. You forget your history, Lannister. How old was your father when he marched on the reins and burnt down Towerbeck Hall with everyone inside? 18 or 19 name days. We are not much younger than that. The Lannisters are not the Rings or the Tarbecks, Tyrion retorted. You are lions like the Ransom, and lions can be tamed or killed, Jon said. Return my father as Lord of Winterfell, my sister unharmed, our sword ice in the bones of our men and women. Only then will we consider peace if the Lannisters leave the Riverlands, Robb said. There was not a hint of wavering in his voice. The negotiations had ended. Jon sat alone, brooding in the solar after Robb had left with the Blackfish and his lady mother. He missed Arya, so fierce and willful, a skinny wild thing with torn clothes and scabby knees and elbows. Arya was a true wolf of the North, loyal, tough, fearless. He would give anything for her to return to his side, so he can muss her hair and laugh at her antics. Forget, honor, Jon would burn down the world to save her. I will make them pay, little sister. All of them. If Hoster Tully was well read, there was no proof in the River Run library. It was not just the paucity of works, but the selection and condition of the books and scrolls. In his experience, books in Westeros fell into three broad categories. There were the great histories, usually the Targaryen kings, but also of regional affairs like 10,000 ships and judgments of 3 Stark lords. There were technical books that dealt with subjects near and dear to a maester. The River Run Library had a number of scrolls written by usse bankers on money and accounting, but none on smithing or construction. The last group were adventure books, thinly disguised bodice rippers meant to titillate the reader. The most well-thumbed tome was 4 scrolls on the erotic adventures of a young slave girl in a Lycian pillow house. A caution for young girls, professing to be the autobiography of a noblewoman lost to sin. Was poorly written, but rather engaging, as Allaress had pointed out when she lent Jon her copy. He had been most amused when after 9 erotic adventures the debauched woman became a septa in Old Town. Jon browsed the single bookshelf to see if there were any tales on the Valyrians. The glory days of that ancient house had passed due to the defeat of the dragons, but Jon admired the masters for Driftmark for their bold voyages to Volantis and beyond. The Targaryens might have ruled the skies, but their closest liegemen controlled the narrow sea, until the dance of the dragons weakened both houses. Jon always thought the history of Westeros would have been different if the sea snake had lived or either his sons had been a hand of the king. He was glancing through a book on the second son, Alyn Oakenfist, when he heard a mocking voice. Bastard born! A fitting book for the bastard of Winterfell to read. Tyrion Lannister said. Hello, imp, Jon said as he continued to read. They were alone in the library that morning, except for the room where Jerry was teaching a class of small folk their letters. Does it not bother you to be called a bastard? Tyrion asked curiously. Why? I am a bastard. Just like Adam and Alan Valyrian. That never stopped Adam from flying a dragon or Alan from ruling the waves. At the Citadel, knowledge has nothing to do with lineage, Jon said. Brave words. But I suppose you can hide being a bastard, that I will always be seen as a dwarf, Tyrion said, sipping from a goblet of dark purple wine. And why should that matter to a true-born son of Tywin Lannister? Jon replied. You know how dwarves are seen, monsters not fit to live. And you know how my father treats me. They say you have 12 informers among the prisoners, Tyrion said. That guess was far too low. Hey, your father despises you for a drunken whoremonger who killed his wife. Why do you still serve him then, when he wished to drown you as a babe? Why not be free of a man who hates you? Jon said. You are never free of your parents, bastard. And I serve House Lannister just as you serve House Stark. Lady Stark hates you as well. Tyrion retorted, Lady Stark is not my parent, nor does she rule House Stark. My Lord Father does, and Robb will after him. And no matter what happens, I am loyal to them and my sisters and brothers. Then why not agree to peace? Your father will be alive and your sister will be safe. Your family can return to Winterfell, although Ned Stark would be on the wall. Tyrion said, My sister is safe. I have 2. Have you forgotten Arya Stark? Jon put the salacious account of Lord Axley's life back on the shelf. He admired the Oakenfist. Why are you even here? You have heard my brother's terms, and that won't change. Why don't you scurry back to Tywin? Why for the tourney? I welcome a chance to see the brave Northerners in action. My cousin Serretts is fighting in the lists, and I am eager to bet on him, Tyrion said with great cheer. He was lying. The words came out too quickly, like Serretts' attacks on the Sivas board. Tyrion Lannister should have left last night to report to the Lannister camp 100 miles away to the east. And yet, the dwarf had not even sent a raven after the meeting. What could Tyrion be planning? Serretts was guarded behind floors of Mormonts. The loyalty of the phrase was uncertain, but a letter to the twins would serve better than speaking with Steffron or Ryman Frey at River Run. And the blast furnace was shut down, so no spies could determine the right mixture of limestone, charcoal, and coal. Jon turned away to make sure that Tyrion would not detect his suspicion. Jon calmed down, his face resuming a thoughtful, brooding pose, and he gestured to the classroom. I must leave for the tourney. Once the class is finished, I will take them all to the campgrounds. Ah, the famous Wintertown boys. Are they really learning how to read and write? Tyrion asked. Aye, and not just the small folk from the north. I have low-born boys and girls working in the crew from the Riverlands. One even fled from Old Town, Jon said. I saw a young boy with blonde hair and green eyes. He did not look like he was from the north or the river. He seemed quite clever, but then we Westermen are, Tyrion quipped. Jon was not certain of the connection, but knew that Tysha wanted Jerry safe. Small folk are not fools. They can be taught how to read, fight, and build as well as any nobleman. Better, even. I have seen highborns at the Citadel. They do not learn any better than my crew. But that is not the way of the world. The great houses play the Game of Thrones, and the low-born suffer in silence. They pray only for rain, healthy children, and a summer that never ends. Better to be happy and ignorant than miserable and learned, Tyrion said. Summer always ends, and winter comes. These boys and girls are happy to learn. Why should common people aspire to a better life like Ser Duncan the Tall? He rose from flea bottom to Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Jon said. Ser Duncan is the exception that proves the rule. Aegon, the Via tried to grant rights and protections to the small folk, but my father, as Hand of the King, undid those laws. He said the lowborn must know their place. No doubt, he meant at his feet, Tyrion said. Jon stared at the dwarf. Enjoy your quips and clever words, Lannister. Aegon the Unlikely was a good man. His reforms may have failed, but history will show that he was in the right. You would rather jape and take your father's coin. Better to fight and fail than to refuse to act. Your words sound sweet, but you don't know my father or how dark and cruel the world truly can be. In war, many suffer, and small folk the most of all, Tyrion said. Says the man whose father ordered the ravaging of the Riverlands, Jon replied. Do you think the Northmen will not do the same? When your corn and bread runs out, how do you plan to feed the army? The Trident only has so much trout. Tyrion said. Perhaps you will be right, but at least the North did not begin by burning and looting. Jon said, walking away from the dwarf. Jon waited outside, listening to Jerry speak about how to pair letters with sounds. The boy was a good teacher, and chose an interesting passage in the Southern Kingdom to read to the class. It was about Nymeria leading the 10,000 ships after the Rhoynar fled from the Dragon Lords. The fleet wandered for a decade in Sotheros and the Summer Islands, suffering storms, disease, and slavery before landing at the Green Blood in Dorne. There, after marrying Mors Martell, then the lordling of a minor house, Nymeria burnt her ships at the wedding, signaling that the Rhoynar had found a new home. She would live and die in Dorne, surviving 3 husbands and sending 6 kings to the wall. She was a great and strong leader, and Jon hoped that Arya's dire wolf had the same toughness and fortitude. The wooden door burst open, and dozens of boys and girls left, chattering excitedly about the tourney. The last 3 to leave were Chet, Satin, and Jerry, who gave the Southern Kingdom back to Jon. Me lord, everyone enjoyed the tale of Queen Nymeria's burning of the Rhoynar fleet. Will you go down the tourney with us? Jerry asked. Princess Nymeria, the Dornish do not have queens. Aye, it will begin soon. I am eager to see who will be matched against each other, Jon said, putting Elres's gift away. Jerry hesitated for a moment and then spoke up. Milord, something strange happened last night. We were watching the puppet show with the lions and wolves when we saw a Lannister man wearing a red cloak enter the tent. And did the man get angry or create a scene? Jon asked. That's what Chet and Satin thought would happen, my lord. But here's the thing. He just laughed, like the rest of us. He wasn't angry or nothing, Jerry said. Master Snow, I also thought something was odd. He seemed friendly with the fat Dornish man like he knew him in the past. Satin said, Do you remember what the man looked like? Could you spot him in the crowd? Jon asked. My lord, it was dark, and he wore a cloak. He was tall and blond, but his face was plain. There are a lot of red cloaks outside the castle, Chet said. I don't want to put you in danger by spying, but you were right to tell me. There are many visitors to Riverrun, and some could be dangerous. If you see anything else odd or unusual, tell me. Jon added, The first day of the tourney was greeted by a bright morning sun, a cool breeze, and a mass of people, elbowing their way to get a better view. Jon could have sat with Robb and the Tullys in the best seats in the viewing stand, but he chose instead to stay with the Wintertown boys. Jon had bought several sacks of foodstuffs, fried bread, bacon, hard-boiled eggs, roasted corn, and apples on a stick. The boys and girls gossiped about various nights as they snacked on the crude breakfast and examined the fine pavilions set up across the field. The grandest pavilion was obvious, festooned with gold lions on a crimson background. Dozens of red cloaks wandered nearby, although they didn't seem to be on guard. Jon saw Tyrion next to his cousin, the big burly man with the large sword, who had taken off his red fox fur cloak to don gilded ringmail. A few other knights stood near, one with the gold-inverted pile of the golden tooth, and another with the sigil of an orange burning tree. A large pavilion of deep-dyed green stood 10 feet to the left. There were many shields hung outside those doors. The cornucopia of the Merryweathers, the white sun and white chevron on an orange field of the Ashfords, and the red apple and the green apple of the Fossaways. The red apple was Cider Hall, while the green apple, no barrel. Owen told him that his uncle, Sir John Fossaway, a well-liked and amiable man, had settled the feud between the two branches. The most prominent was a polished steel shield with a golden rose on the green field. That was the Rose of Highgarden, and all the houses in the Reach pledged allegiance to their Tyrell liege lord. "Anyone you fancy a bet on?" a voice behind him said. Jon turned to the tall brown-haired man with a trimmed beard. "Arslan, right?" Jon said, and the steward nodded. "Well, I would not bet on the Freys." There were easily a dozen Frey knights in the 64 contestants of the melee, with their weaselly faces and rat-like eyes. Jon liked Perwyn and Olivar, but the other Freys had taken after the irascible Walder in looks, personality, and skill. Black Walder and Hostine were considered fighters, but the small Jon could probably beat both of them by himself without a sweat. Harazir Rala is formidable, and with Valyrian steel, he will be hard to best. Harazlin said, "Master, whether you know more about the contestants, who are the best fighters here?" For a steward, Arslan was keenly interested in martial matters. The Umbers and Karstarks are skilled warriors. If Robb was fighting, I would certainly bet on him, but he can't partake. None of his men would dare strike him. I don't know much about the fighting abilities of the Rivermen. Mark Piper boasts a great deal, but David Lannister beat him soundly in a melee. Carol Vance seems quick with the blade, but they say his cousin Hugo Vance is better. I have heard Cyril Brynden was a great fighter in his prime too. Arslan said wistfully. Jon looked carefully at Arslan. The man was built powerfully, like he engaged in hard physical labor. As steward of the Fossaway lands ordered his peasants to farm. A knight who trained regularly for battle, though that person would have thick arms and calloused hands. "How long, sir, have you been steward in Cider Hall?" Arslan smiled awkwardly. "I am no Siren, only a steward. My father served the Fossaways as steward before me." "And what do you think of the new changes Owen has made to the farms?" Jon asked. He had spotted his old friend from the Citadel making his way to them. "Oh, very smart. Owen says you showed him how to plant clover to attract honeybees." "Cider Hall's apples, thank you, Maester," Arslan said, with a flourish. "And what types of apples have benefited most? The Golden Pippins or the Prince Alberts?" Jon asked, smiling back. The red ones," Arslan said. "The Norfolk Biffins, and good thing, too. Those apples can be dried or made into cider." Owen sat down, handing 2 of the 3 horns of nut brown ale to Jon and Arslan. The steward smiled in relief, and then toasted Owen. The 2 Reachmen quaffed their drinks. "I am worried about the feast tonight. I have heard the Tullys only serve trout." "Unfortunately, those tales have some truth. I have eaten more fish in the last month than the 4 years at the Citadel." Jon sighed. "Master, the pairings for the first round are being announced. Daisy Mormont will fight first," Chet said. The tourney would have jousts and archery, but the main attraction was a melee that would stretch over the 3 days. Each round was elimination, so the champion would have to win 6 bouts. The crowds were keenly interested in the betting, as was Jon. "Who is Daisy matched against?" Jon asked. "Hostine Frey," Jerry said. The husky knight had thick, brawny arms and a jutting square jaw. He was strong as a bull, and just as dim, he wielded a long sword of mediocre quality. and carried a thick oak kite shield with 2 blue towers connected by a bridge. Hostein's ugly face grinned, certain of an easy victory over a girl. Geralt and Lyra were helping their big sister put on the armor. Daisy donned the steel breastplate, tassets, and greaves, but her sisters were fitting her with the pieces that covered her arms, elbows, and shoulders. Her steel shield with a rampant black bear in a green field rested in the grass. No one in the crowd even noticed her formidable morning star, the newly forged holy water sprinkler. "What odds are being offered?" Jon asked. 2 to 1, master. The Freys are certain that Hostein will win, Chet said. Jon beckoned to his eager crew of boys and girls. Owen and Arslan were listening with rapt attention. "Bet everything you can on Daisy. Every silver stag and copper star. If you find a fool willing to bet gold dragons on Hostein, I will take the bet." "Maester, if the odds change, should we continue to bet?" Bethany asked. "Absolutely, Daisy should be the easy favorite, not the underdog," Jon said. The crew raced into the stands to place bets. "You seem quite confident, Maester, in the young lady," Arslan said. "Daisy prefers to be called the she-bear, and yes, she is quite a fighter. Plus, Hostein Frey has not seen the new armor and weapons. He wears an average-quality mail shirt." The fighters bowed to the nobles in the stands, and they entered a battle ring, demarcated by chalk lines. Hostein looked surly as ever, while Daisy waved coolly to the crowd, her bassinet still in her hands. She put on her steel helmet, attached a metal visor, and picked up the holy water sprinkler and the steel shield. The crowd gasped when they saw the full ensemble. The Mormont girls wanted to look like she-bears, but Daisy looked far more like a silver praying mantis, ready to spring and kill its prey. When the battle began, Hostein ran forward and slashed hard with the longsword. The she-bear dodged easily, moving lightly in the well-balanced plate armor. The knight bellowed his frustration and continued his futile attempts. Hostein Frey was easy to anger, and he exerted all his might striking at air. Daisy had not even needed to use her shield. Then, when Hostein slowed slightly, the she-bear struck. She smashed the holy water sprinkler against the kite shield, the spikes tearing through the wood. The Frey knight screamed, and Daisy landed 3 more solid blows, the steel head of the Morning Star ripping large wooden chunks on the hits and backswings. With his shield arm down, Daisy rammed the steel shield into Hostein's chin, and the loud ring was followed by a thud as the husky body dropped to the floor. Daisy placed the sharp spike of the holy water sprinkler directly over the Frey knight's face. "Victory, Daisy Mormont," a crier announced to the stunned crowd. Jon chuckled as his crew began to collect their winnings, much of it from angry Freys. Jon had won a dozen gold dragons and a bag full of silver stars. The Mormont warriors hooted and hollered, and Daisy, the steel helmet off and her dark hair blowing in the wind, winked at Jon amidst giggles from her sisters. The cry of merchants and peddlers rang out as they offered wares of ale, food, brightly colored scarves to the crowd. The winning bettors spent their coin lavishly, with raucous applause for the victors. Those standing near Jon were particularly happy as the Wintertown boys had cleaned up, betting on the Northmen. 24 of the 32 matches had been won by the Northmen, with Harris Harlaw, Davin Lannister, and the 2 Fossaways also advancing. The Rivermen had done particularly poorly, with a meager 4 winners and Perwyn the only free knight who advanced. Jon's betting strategy was eagerly watched, carefully emulated, but really quite simple. He bet aggressively on those wearing his armor and weapons. All 3 Mormont girls had won their first round, as had many members of Robb's guard. Lyra Mormont enjoyed thrashing Theon Greyjoy and denting the fancy gold guard of his longsword. Jon had no doubt the Small Jon and the Karstark brothers outclassed their opponents, but the steel breastplates and helmets certainly helped. The armor not only absorbed glancing blows, but allowed the wearers to move and strike swiftly. In the second round, that betting strategy would be less relevant as the men of the Honor Guard would begin to be matched against each other. Jon gave instructions for Chet and Satin to bet on the second round, bade goodbye to Owen and Arslan, and walked away. Ghost found Jon as he left the crowds of spectators. Like his master, the wolf never liked crowds. Ghost had patrolled the Maiden Vault last night, and his red garnet eyes continued to dart about, vigilant and tense. Without the wolf at his side, Jon had slept poorly, dreaming of a little girl lost in a hall haunted by monsters. He missed Ghost's smell and the comfort of the thick, shaggy white fur. but the prisoners were more important. Jon opened the flap, his wolf trailing behind. The puppets had been packed away, and there were only 2 people sitting in the tent. The fat Dornish man and his wife eating a meal of porridge with duck eggs. "Good sir, the first show will be in the afternoon." The Dornish man stopped when he saw Jon. "But if you would like, we can show you the play now." His wife curtsied. "Milord, thank you so much for telling others to see our show. We appreciate the custom." She hurried to a chest and took out the newly painted puppet of Dost, with bushier fur, red eyes, and his jaw closed. It was an excellent likeness, but the real ghost was quite disinterested in the wooden figurine. Jon sat down. "I believe you two know why I am here." The fat man cringed. "Milord, we barely know the man. I had not seen him for many years." His wife put her hand on her husband's arm. "Gyron, the White Wolf has treated us fair. Tell him." The Dornish man agreed. "I met him a decade ago, sire." Then he called himself Lester, the Lucky. "He joined our mummers' troop in the Reach. I hadn't seen him for many years. Lester changed his name after leaving us in the Riverlands. They say he fell in with a bad crowd, robbers and highwaymen." Sidra snorted. "He left because we found him stealing from the till. Had he stayed, the company would have flogged him or worse. We couldn't cut his hand off because he played Florian, the Fool, or Riam Redwine in performances." "Could he fight with a sword?" Jon asked. "He could fight as well as any mummer, which is to say, not at all. He may appear skilled with a sword, but any real soldier would gut him quickly," the lady said. "So why is he here serving Lannisters?" Jon asked. "We don't know, master, I swear. We are an honest troupe of puppeteers. We merely entertain the crowds. We want nothing to do with any trickery," Garin said. He carried a large purse full of silver and gold. He boasted of his good fortune, but who knows how he stole that money, Sadra said, hands on her hips. Jon thought it more likely that Tyrion Lannister provided the coin. He placed a large fistful of silver stags on the table. "Thank you for your aid. Good fortune on your show." When Jon returned, the melee was still in the second round. The crowd had turned festive and cheered for all the combatants, regardless of house or allegiance. Even Sir Davin Lannister had been applauded when he dispatched Robin Flint, and not just by the Westermen. All around him, boys and girls made merry as if the shadow of war had faded. That was an illusion, but the lie was good for today. In another life he might have been friends with these men, and fought with them on a quest or a tourney. But the happiness of the world was a fragile thing, easily destroyed by selfish desires, whether it be the Kingslayer or a dragon prince, and then the price was paid in tears and blood. Jon ignored the happy mood. Hard things only grow harder if they are ignored. He looked at Tyrion Lannister slapping the back of Ser Davin, at Harris Herlaw sharpening Nightfall. He listened to the easy banter of Arslan as he laughed with Owen over the sad state of their purse. A master of whispers has no friends, Jon thought. Bloodraven had known that truth. "Sadden," Jon called, "take this note and bring it to my brother Robb." The boy horse stood up and rushed off to the center stands. "Master, who do you like for the next matches?" Arslan asked, more eagerly than he should. "Many of the easiest matches have been fought. Ser Davin and Ser Harris defeated their opponents, and now the remaining duels are not as easy to bet. Both the Small John and Harry and Karstark had won, as had all 3 Mormont girls. Pardon me, sirs, I would speak to Daisy. She is a fine fighter. I am glad none of our men fought against the she-bears." Aisling said. Besides, Theon, Daisy, Jory, and Lyra had faced rivermen in their duels. The Mormonts had blessed them senseless with the steel morning stars. "Owen, would you care to meet my brother Robb this morning? I've told him much about the Citadel, and he would be glad to meet friends from the Reach," Jon asked. Owen exchanged a quick glance and nod to his steward. "We would be most pleased, Jon." They walked back to the castle, Jon at Owen's side, chatting about mutual friends, second and third sons forging links at the Citadel. Owen's cousins had acquitted themselves well today, one losing to Lord Jason Mallister in the second round, and the other defeating Mark Piper and making it to the next day. The field would be cleared for the afternoon jousts. As they entered the hall of the main keep, Jory and Lyra Mormont moved closer, flanked by a few other members of the honor guard. Daisy had alerted Eddard Karstark, and the Blackfish followed as well, with the captain of the guards and the master-at-arms besides him. Jon led Owen and Arslan to the great solar of Riverrun, where Robb waited, sword in hand. As they neared the door, Jon spoke to the steward. Owen says that you have had better luck than New Barrel in implementing the four-course field system. Oh yes, the field system. We have been planting clover everywhere. It has helped immensely. Arslan replied. Olivar Frey opened the door, and the Reachman finally noticed that there were many others in the hallway. Serene Bryn was closest, but Robin Ryger and Desmond Grell blocked one side, while the Mormont girls sealed another. And what type of clover did you plant near the orchards? Jon said. Red, like our apples, Urslan replied. Red, sir, not crimson? Jon asked. Arslan glanced with concern at Owen, who merely sighed. Robb Stark sat behind an oak desk, grey wind at his feet, and his blue eyes staring at the steward. Sit down, sir, he said, rubbing the dire wolf's head and pointing at a single chair in the middle of the room. Shouldn't Owen sit as well? Arslan said. He is not a sir or a lord, but you are, Jon said, as the room filled with the Blackfish and the Mormonts. You are no steward. I doubt you are even a fossaway. The would-be steward shrugged, a tight-lipped smile on his face as he sat. He was broad of shoulder and taller than Robb or Jon. How do you know? You don't know very much about apples, but a great deal about fighting, and bees don't like red clover. The flowers are too long for their tongues to reach. But crimson clover produces excellent honey. I recommended that variety to Owen because it makes better hay. But enough talk. You are important enough for House Fossaway, Ashford and Merryweather to provide an escort, and there was a shield of a golden rose on a green field hanging in the pavilion. House Tyro. I doubt Highgarden would risk their heir, and the third son, Loras, is famed for his finery and flowers. So you must be the second son, Garland Tyro, Jon said. Owen said you were quite clever. I see he was right. Garland said ruefully. Why are you here, Satyr? Under false pretenses, Robb asked. The Blackfish glowered balefully by his side, but Grey Wind stayed quiet and did not even snarl. I meant no harm. Perhaps I gave a false name, but I merely wished to observe the Northmen in battle, Garland said. He seemed light of heart, even though Jon had heard at the Citadel that the second Tyrell was deadly serious in training with the sword. You are a spy. Tell us why you were sent. The truth, Jon said. You cannot blame Highgarden for being curious of battles near its borders. Bitterbridge is less than 200 miles away from River Run, and Golden Grove sits on the edge of the Westerlands. We need to keep our eyes and ears open on the north, the Riverlands, the Westermen, and even the Ironborn, Garland said. If that were true, House Tyrell would spend a single night or a low-born spy. Instead, they sent their second son, and you pulled Owen out of the Citadel to explain apples and clover to you. You have greater reason than curiosity, sir, Jon said. The Tyrell Knight considered for a moment and then beckoned Owen Fossaway over. The two spoke in muted voices before Garland turned his broad, handsome face to Robb. Your brother is right, but I suppose the news will come soon enough. My sister, Marguerite Tyrell, will wed Renly Baratheon. Renly means to be king, and my family sent me to understand what is happening in the Riverlands, the knight said. Robb scratched his beard. Raxley cannot be king. He cannot claim the throne over Stannis. Garland switched from a relaxed pose to a serious one. I see your point, but if Tyrell's swords hold the Iron Throne, who will dispute his reign? Stannis will. If the Lannister children are bastards, then he is the rightful heir, and he is not a man who will forget that, Rode said. My father says that there are few men as hard and unforgiving as Stannis Baratheon. Who did the Stormland serve, Stannis or Renly? Jon asked. Rosierly holds Storm's End. Stannis has Dragonstone. The lands there are poorer, and Stannis' lords love the dragons more than any stag. The bannermen will follow, Renly. Garland said confidently. Unless he loses, and then they may flee back to Stannis, Robb said. But for now, Rensley's army is larger, and with the men of the Reach, would dwarf anything Stannis can raise near Dragonstone, Jon thought aloud. But if Stannis has few men, he is not a threat to Renly. The Lannisters are? Why does he not attack Tywin now? Garland looked apologetic, and Robb exchanged a disgusted look with Jon. The two brothers did not speak, but everyone in the room could see their silent conversation. Lord Stark, what does this mean? The Blackfish asked. Rigyar Liberathien and the Tyrells want to see the wolf and the lion battle in the Riverlands. They will wait so they can negotiate terms with whoever wins, Robb said with distaste. Lord Stark, I wanted to attack the Lannisters. If the Reach helped free the Riverlands, then it would be easier for them to follow Rensley. But I do not have my good brother's ear, Gerlan said. I do not like all this trickery, but you and your men are still welcome to our hospitality. Will you still disguise yourself as a steward, Serretts? Robb said. Garland laughed. In truth, I would have loved to fight in the melee, but it is too late to sign up for the lists. Perhaps if you would grant me a spar, Lord Stark. The smiling knight paused and turned serious again. I would offer you goodwill to repay your kindness. Beware the Ironborn, they have rebuilt their fleet, and Balon Greyjoy wishes to return to the old way. But we have Lyanna's ward. Would he attack the north? Robb asked. The Greyjoys fear death less than most. The Balon had 8 brothers and 3 are alive, and some say they are all insane. He rose against the throne and risked the lives of his sons before his 2 oldest died in the rebellion. He is a prickly man and thirsts for revenge, Graulan said. How do you know this, sir? Jon asked. We have spies on Harla and Pike. The squids may have escaped the notice of the Iron Throne, but we know the numbers of their ships, Graulan said. My thanks, Sir Garland, and I will be happy to spar, but perhaps not in the yard. Else people will wonder why I defeated a steward. Robb jested and shook hands with Sir Garland. I am sorry, Jon. House Fossaway had to follow Highgarden, Owen said. I understand. But Owen, you are not a good spy. Who was the mastermind behind this brilliant plan? Jon asked. Lady Olenna Tyrell, she would like you very much. I wrote to her after Cider Hall planted the clover. I told her that you would make a clever steward. Owen said with a smirk. In the Great Hall, it was easy to tell who had won both rounds of the melee. Not all 16 of the victors were there. In fact, the 3 Mormont girls had left to seek out Mage and to patrol the keep, but many champions sat near the high table, surrounded by admirers and basking in glory. Even those who had lost raised horns of ale and goblets of wine as toasts. Eddard and Torrhen Karstark fell in the second round to Lord Mallister and Wylis Manderly, but they still cheered for their victorious brother Harrion. Sarah Davin and Sarah Harry sat facing each other, an oddity in the sea of Northmen. Theon sat next to Harrys, and Tyrion was on the other side of his cousin, holding court over the table, his squire filling his goblet and his man Bronn by his side. Come, Maester, grace us with your company, Tyrion said. Jon sat down with Owen and Arslan. It was not a full feast. There were capons, nicely crisped, and wild boar stewed with apples in a white wine sauce. There was a salad of green beans, red beets, and onions. It looked colorful, healthy, and tasteless, and was being clearly neglected in favor of the meat. Jon took out a small jar of the dark liquid, poured it over the salad, and handed it over to Owen. Owen sniffed and took a bite. This is delicious, Jon, some northern concoction. I made this recently, vinegar but sweet and tart. It can be used on all sorts of vegetables or even eaten alone with bread and butter. You can even drink it with water, Jon said. Rosalind eagerly sampled it, admiring the fruity texture. This is marvelous. It would go well with fruits and vegetables from the Reach. Aye, with the right grapes, I could make this in bulk. I would not be surprised if even the Asslesy would be interested. Jon said to the great interest of the Reachmen. The Theon Greyjoy snorted in derision. Fruits and vegetables. We are in the middle of war, Snow. Have you become a greengrocer? Is this how you wasted 4 years at the Citadel? We studied animal husbandry and agriculture. Greyjoy. There is no shame in that. Any lord will tell you that crops and livestock are as important as castles and swords. Jon said, War is the proper trade of a man. Fire, blood, and song. Battle is where men belong, where men go berserk and feel no pain, Theon declared. Jon thought Greyjoy had felt plenty of pain at Lyra Mormont's Morning Star. As for going berserk, Theon might be confusing that with being drunk. There is more to life than whacking others with pointy sticks, although my brother severe by night and does not seem to agree. Tyrion jested. Master Snow, what did you study in the Citadel? Sarah Harris asked. Many things, Sarah. Steel, farming, healing, mathematics. Jon said, What of navigation? Did you study how to pilot a ship? Harris asked. How could any Greenlander know how to steer a ship? Theon said. Jon ignored the Sion who for the last decade had been on 2 less ships than Jon. You mean the problem of longitude? The reader says that one day it will be solved, and then the sea song will travel further than any ship from the Iron Islands. Harris said, My nuncle is crazed. No one can solve the problem of longitude. Theon laughed. What is this problem, Sire? Tyrion asked. A ship at sea can tell the distance north or south. You can use the sun at noon or the North Star and calculate the angle of the horizon, but no one has ever figured out how far west or east. Satyrs Aaron Harris said, I see, and any ship can easily get lost out of sight of land. The further you sail, the more confused you will be, until a ship will have no idea how far it went or where, Tyrion said. A proper seaman would know. You just need a sense of the waves and the winds. I am certain I could pilot any vessel in the Iron Fleet, Theon insisted. Greyjoy, when you are out on the water, after a storm, no one has any sense of location. The methods of log line and spyglass only offers a guess, and in an uncharted area, that guess is useless. And men will starve and die while you sail east or west to find a coast. Harris said, It is true, you can sail from White Harbor to Braavos. But if you go north into the Shivering Sea or west into the Sunset Seas, or even south to the Summer Islands, you would get lost. Ships can only sail on certain routes close to the shore. Wylis added that 2 Manderley brothers had come over when they heard the discussion of navigation. I do not see how it can be done, Wendell said wistfully. If it could, ships from White Harbor would sail the far seas like Brandon the shipwright. To explore rather than kill and raid. It seems that the gods, old and new, wish to keep us in Westeros, Ser Harris said. I can solve it. It would not be easy, but there is a way, Jon said. But how, Meister? Ser Harris asked despite the doubt in the eyes of others. What we know is not much. What we do not know is immense, Jon said, tapping his fingers on the table. But we can try to discover more. We live in a clockwork universe, and the stars and the moon must follow a celestial pattern. We can measure the distance and the angle between the moon and stars in the night sky and make a number of calculations. Men would need to know how to take lunars with a sextant and use mathematics. Mathematics to navigate by the stars? A perplexed Wendell asked. Decimals and multiplication. You would need tables for the math of triangles and exponents, Jon said. Perhaps you could observe the moon and the stars on land. If you know the distance, then you could test your calculations, Tyrion said. It will never work, Snow, ship captains, adding and subtracting sums on a piece of paper like a clerk counting coppers in a brothel. The islands are full of men of iron and salt, not numbers. Theon japed. No wonder why the Ironborn lose so easily and are so poor, Tyrion smirked. Maester, is this possible? To determine longitude by the stars. I know men have tried to do so in the past, but failed. Brandon the shipwright was not the only one to be lost in the Sunset Sea. House Farwind has attempted to sail west, but they are queer folk who claim that a great world untouched by man lies west of Westeros, Harris said. It will not be easy, but it can be done, sir. But I would need a few moons to calculate the numbers. I would need to teach others how to use sextants to take a lunar, and I would need to write a book with the tables needed, Jon said. Well, once this war is over, you can do more important things like navigate by the stars. I am sure the Citadel will be happy to have you back, Tyrion said. Jon would have been happy to return to his experiments and studies, but the dwarf's concern was laughable. The Lannisters might care if he could turn lead into gold, but sextants and sails, the Westermen had no love of the sea. Lannisport had been raided 24 times by the Ironborn, and any discovery in navigation would benefit Oldtown and Pike more. It had been a long time since the sailors of House Foreman went out to sea. Jon knew that Tyrion was plotting. He had stayed at River Run, hired a mummer and his guards, and those same guards wandered about River Run, carrying messages to the prisoners. A mummer, guards, messages, prisoners. Tyrion thought he weaved a plot worthy of Lane the Clever. This wasn't Casterly Rock, though, and Jon was not as thick as Corlys Casterly. Jon would end this mummer's farce. The Winterfell guards had taken up posts through the Great Hall, hidden by stone columns, or the rush of servant girls, bringing meat and drink for the great feast. There were several dozen guards prowling about, swords ready, eyes vigilant. The Blackfish had instructed Sir Robb and Ryder to strengthen the River Run defenses, but Robb had insisted on other trusted hands from the North Hall of Smallin, Fat A.L. Belly, young Callan, Jax, Shad, and Quent. When Jon told Robb in private of his concerns about Tyrion and the Mummer Guard, the heir to Winterfell placed the castle on alert, but did not share his thoughts. Even Lady Stark had not been told of the reason, only that Robb was concerned about treachery and mischief. Robb wore mail under his doublet, and Grey Wind stayed by his side at the high table. The Tullys were out in force, with Hoster sitting on pillows and wearing a thick wool robe to hide his shrunken state. His eyes were blurry as he sat between his two children, Sara Edmure and Lady Catelyn, mumbling about events long ago. Jon did not envy the Tullys or Robb dealing with a sick and dying old man. Hoster Tully may have been a great fighter in his youth, but this was a battle already lost, even if he stubbornly clung on to life. Despite Maester Vaemon's efforts, it was only a matter of weeks or months before the Lord of River Run would be placed on a wood funeral boat, with his armor, shield, and hunting horn, to rest forever in the mud of the Trident. Jon sat with the Mormonts and the Manderleys. The mood of the table was ebullient with Wireless, Daisy and Lyra all making it past the first 2 rounds of the melee. Jory had as well, but she was absent patrolling the maiden vault. Lady Magie Mormont was bursting with pride at her brood, and Lyra opined that even 10-year-old Lyanna would have given Theon a sound beating. Jon was seated a fair distance from Robb. The heads of the sworn houses to House Tully were closest to the high table, and many of those lords sat with their heirs or wives. The great houses of the north, the Karstarks, the Umbers, and the Boltons, took precedence, and ambitious nobles like the Glovers and the Freys had claimed better positions at the banquet. The rich smell of cooked meat wafted through the great hall. Aurochs roasted for hours, basted in herb-encrusted butter until the skin crackled with juice. Jon and the Manderley brothers were relieved. Wellis and Wendell enjoyed fish, but their preferred fare was crabs and lampreys, not endless servings of trout. The servants had already bought out a thick soup of barley and bacon, and snails and honey and garlic sprinkled with crushed nuts. Jon knew the trout dishes would come, trout in pies, trout fried with almonds, and trout baked in clay, but he hoped for a simple roast chicken or onion pie. Then Jon felt a growl deep inside him of suspicion. There were intruders here, men out to harm his friends and pack. He blinked and he was still sitting, surrounded by friendly Manderleys and Mormonts. But the anger was real. Ghost had sensed something, and the direwolf was a gift from the old gods of the north. The sigils of House Stark were more perceptive than any man. Jon reached out and touched Ghost. He could see now the stairs of the keep and smell the lavender and violet as he hunted down the invaders. He climbed up the floors past heavy, thick doors, following the smell of death. "Master, would you like a slice of crab pie?" Wendell asked, his mustache dripping with the thick cream sauce. Jon blinked and agreed to a slice. He could get Rise and rush over to the keep, but the wolf already had the scent. Jon turned his eyes down on the delectable, slightly burnt slice, blocked out the noise of toasts by the black woods and brackens, and returned to Ghost. He rushed up to the highest level of the keep, bounding the steps 2 or 3 at a time. He saw the body on the stone floor, a stocky, bald man with Mormont colors, his head turned to the side in an impossible position, with deep bruises on the neck, a swollen dark tongue, and dead eyes. Ghost burst into the next room. There were 4 red cloaks there, with another Mormont man down, bleeding where he was smashed to the ground. Jon could hear a faint rasp of breath from the unconscious guard, but not from the dark-haired girl whose was being lifted in the air by strong, hairy hands on her throat. Ghost jumped in the air, his jaw biting cleanly through the left palm, and the red cloak screamed in pain. The wolf savaged the man's right arm, tearing a chunk out of the wrist. Jory gasped for air, falling heavily. Ghost sprang again, knocking down a man attempting to pick a lock to the door to the Lannister prisoners. The other 2 men cowered at the sight of the bloody jaws of the white wolf. One was tall and blond with a plain face. Under his red cloak, he was garbed in rough homespun clothes. This was the mummer that had joined Garen's troop. Ghost snarled and bared his teeth. Jory grabbed her morning star and yelled loudly, calling for the other Mormon guards. They emerged from the other floors, and Jon knew then that the Lannister plot had failed. Ghost would keep Jory safe, and the Lannister men were vastly outnumbered in the keep. Jon stood up and hoped that the pupils of his eyes could not be seen in the smoky hall. Some riverman was droning on and on about the courage of Hoster Tully in the Battle of the Bells. Jon pointed to the dwarf and yelled, "Arrest Tyrion Lannister." Chaos broke out as guards converged on the Lannister table. Robb stood up at the high table and Grey Wind snarled by his side. Sir Brynden made his way to the Lannister table, flanked by Sir Robin, Rhaegar, and Sir Desmond Grell. "How dare you? I am protected by guest right." An outraged Tyrion blustered. "What are you doing, Snow?" Lady Stark cried. "Jon, what is happening?" Robb said loudly. Jon made his way closer to Tyrion. Several members of the honor guard had stood up as well. Eddard Karstark, Darren Hornwood, and Olyvar Frey. Tyrion Lannister has already broken guest right. He sent 4 men to free Sir Jaime Lannister. They killed 1 guard, possibly 2, and attacked Jari Mormont. Tyrion's face went white and crumbled in shock. But, how do you know?" The outraged she-bear stood up. "Snow, is Jory harmed?" Lady Mage yelled. "They tried to strangle her, but she will be okay," Jon said and turned back to the Lannister table. "Who else knew? Did Tywin Lannister send you? Your squire? Your sword?" Eddard and Harrion Karstark grabbed Broad and held down his arms. The small Jon loomed over a frightened Podrick Payne. "I know nothing of this. I am not in charge of the guards," Tyrion cried. Jon thought for an instant. "You lie, Lannister, and not only that, you lie badly. There is a reason why you stayed longer, and not to bet on your cousin in the melee. The attempt was tonight, while all of us were feasting. You would have snuck out after your men freed the Kingslayer. You have no proof. I have been accused of crimes before by Starks," Tyrion said. "Lady Stark arrested you for the wrong reason, and I am a Snow. I am accusing you of a crime that you did commit, a plot to free Jaime Lannister," Jon said. Robb banged his hand on the table. "I have heard enough." The crowd went silent, waiting for his judgment. The door burst open, and a Mormont man in plate rushed in, out of breath. "Lady Mormont, we have been attacked in the keep. 4 men, they killed Tamard, and they hurt Puelise and Lady Jari," the guard cried. The stunned silence was replaced by murmurs, whispers, and astonished stares at both the dwarf and Jon Snow. Robb's angry voice boomed through the hall. "Tyrion Lannister, you have broken guest right. You have attacked my bannermen under the flag of parley and brought murder into the hall of Lord Tully. You will be arrested for your crimes. Guards, take him and all his men."